Chapter 1737 Battling 5 Sir Gods. Boom. All of a sudden, the void in front of Jian Wushuang split open, and a black-robed figure came out of it. The black-robed figure then grinned hideously at Jian Wushuang, and his whole right hand from the arm to finger was scarlet in color. Ghost's bloody hand. With a swing of the bloody hand, the universe was torn open. The bloody hand was just like a crimson flittering light, and its fierce, strong wind was sufficient to tear a chaotic real god into pieces easily. Jian Wushuang's eyes were ice cold, and he moved with lightning speed. By shaking the Blood Mountain sword in his hands slightly, a great amount of sword essence burst forth. After that, with a swing of the Blood Mountain sword, the shocking sword shadow split into three and sliced the incoming giant bloody hand into three parts. At the same time as he swung his sword, there were two brilliant rays of golden light beside Jian Wushuang. They were then shot out, with one of them on his left and the other on his right. Clang! Clang! Two clashing sounds could be heard in the void, and the two rays of golden light were sent flying. However, after becoming stable again, they continued to attack without any fear of death, and with an even faster speed. Ha! These golden swords are not too bad. However, it's a pity that the two of them are too little. A strange laughter could be heard in Jian Wushuang's ears, and the four figures sent the two Hongjun golden swords flying easily. After that, their bodies approached Jian Wushuang quickly. After an instant, they had already appeared beside Jian Wushuang. Among the four of them, one of them used bloody claws, one of them used a saber, one of them held a giant hammer, and the last person used a strange hook. They then attacked at the same time. Swish, 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 swish. There were rays of light glowing. Their speed was so fast that it was shocking. Jian Wushuang gave a cold hum, and his body expanded into a dark golden ancient god that was 100 feet tall instantly. At the space between his eyebrows, there were 6 stars. Moreover, his huge body also started to undergo a transformation immediately. Extra heads and brawny, dark golden arms appeared. He had a total of 5 heads and 10 arms. 5 heads, 10 arms. On the 5 heads, the 5 pairs of icy cold eyes were filled with a great amount of anger. As for the 10 arms, each of them held a sword tightly, and an enormous amount of divine power was released abruptly. Piss off! Swords that were filled with a tremendous amount of sword essence were swung out repeatedly, as though the world would be destroyed and judgment was being passed. His attack then clashed with the incoming 4 attacks that were moving quickly head-on. Boom, 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 boom. Frightening booming sounds could be heard repeatedly. Every booming sound was accompanied with frightening divine power dissipating, and this caused the dark storm which it touched to be on the verge of collapsing. A great number of dark wind blades were blown about mercilessly, and they would move to the battlefield from time to time. However, 1 or 2 dark wind blades were not even considered a threat to those top Sir Gods present. Little kid, accept your death. With a furious roar, one of the black-robed men raised the big hammer in his hands fiercely, and tremendous amount of power gathered. In an instant, it looked as though the whole universe was thrown toward him. What a joke! Jian Wushuang was filled with evil energy. He then moved his 5 heads and 10 arms madly in order to unleash his close-quarters combat abilities to the best of his abilities. At the same time, under the control of Jian Wushuang's soul power, the 2 Hongjun golden swords attacked crazily. Although all the 4 surrounding Sir Gods possessed shocking abilities, and they could exert a huge pressure on Jian Wushuang when they teamed up, Jian Wushuang could remain undefeated for a short amount of time by relying on the perfect combination of his close-quarters combat abilities and Hongjun golden swords. This little kid, his close-quarter combat abilities are so frightening. With the four of us teaming up, we can only push him back slightly. Moreover, it is a situation where we have a huge advantage in our comprehension of doctrines. It's very normal. He possesses the ancient god bloodline, and ancient gods are recognized by the eternal chaotic world as the number one in close-quarters combat. Haha, it will only be interesting like this, and it will also be more fun. All the eyes of the four Sir Gods were scorching hot, and they were filled with excitement. Jian Wushuang's powerful abilities had given them more stimulus instead. At the same time, the abilities of the four were unleashed gradually, and Jian Wushuang was under an even greater amount of pressure. At the same time that Jian Wushuang was fighting intensely with the four Sir Gods, a threatening cold essence came from behind Jian Wushuang abruptly. Jian Wushuang understood at once that the assassin Mo Ing, who had been hiding herself in the darkness, had attacked. King of Venomous Worms, Jian Wushuang bellowed. "Leave it to me." A deep voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. A black hole had appeared at the void behind Jian Wushuang, and a ghost-like figure had come out of it. Just like before, her hand held a dagger, and the dazzling gleam of the dagger appeared abruptly. At that moment, the dagger attacked. Be it the time where she attacked or the way she attacked, both of them were perfect. As Jian Wushuang was besieged by the four Sir Gods, even though he had 5 heads and 10 arms, he was still unable to block the attack. However, all of a sudden, the muscle on the back of his huge, dark golden ancient god body wriggled downward. After that, Russell, a total of 3 hideous, dark red tentacles appeared abruptly. The 3 tentacles were like 3 dark red flittering lights, and they pierced the void easily. After that, they struck the incoming dagger with lightning speed. The dagger was extremely sharp and cold. Moreover, it was also extremely powerful. Hence, it pierced more than half of the tentacles instantly. However, with the great amount of strength that the tentacles contained, the ugly-looking woman Mo Ing was sent flying. Straight away after that, Russell, the surface of Jian Wushuang's ancient god body wriggled crazily, and a hideous worm beast came out of it. As soon as it appeared, the worm beast's body started to expand madly, with an unbelievable speed. Thousands of feet long, tens of thousands of feet long, hundreds of thousands of feet long. In the end, it was more than 1,000,000 feet long. With the appearance of the frightening worm beast within the dark storm almost burst open. Its gigantic, vast body was filled with red scales. It was also emitting extremely cold light. In addition, brawny and hideous tentacles were coming out from beside the scales. There were so many of them that it was uncountable. By looking at it, there were probably more than tens of thousands of tentacles. At the highest point of the red body, there was a huge, dark red head. The head only had a pair of scarlet eyes that were of the size of the sun. Moreover, there was also a large, fierce-looking mouth that had opened. A frightening aura was released from the King of Venomous Worms' body. Upon seeing the huge monster in front of them, even the 5 Sir Gods present revealed a shocked expression. However, Jian Wushuang understood that the body was still not the peak condition of the King of Venomous Worms. At its peak, its body could act as a giant island when it was curled up. King of Venomous Worms, why do you have so many tentacles now? Jian Wushuang's 100-foot-tall ancient god body was standing at the top of the King of Venomous Worms' head. When he looked at the surroundings, he revealed a surprised expression. According to what he knew, the King of Venomous Worms was a plenilune centipede, and he should only have thousands of tentacles. However, at present, he had brought out tens of thousands of tentacles. Ha! Jian Wushuang, this is all thanks to you. As you are an inverse cultivator as well as a royal ancient god, my bloodline has been affected as well. After the transformation, this time around, I have transformed into a supreme, full-foot plenilune of the Plenilune clan. Chapter 1738. Full-foot plenilune? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Sponsored content remove ads. From 1,000-foot plenilune to full-foot plenilune, it was obvious that there was a huge elevation. Then, the 5 Sir Gods stood together in the void. They looked at the huge figure before them, and their faces grew solemn. The information didn't say that there is such a fierce worm following Jian Wushuang. Judging by the looks of the worm, it should be plenilune, that is a parasite on ancient god, but it has so many sirai. Humph, it's just a plenilune. What's there to be afraid of? Let's go. The 5 Sir Gods moved again. Jian Wushuang, let's go too. King of Venomous Worms' deep voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. At the very next moment, its huge body quivered. Cry! A shrill cry resonated through the universe. Then, countless ferocious sirai covered the 5 Sir Gods instantly. The sirai were like arrows that shot out. They contained terrifying powers of destruction. The 5 Sir Gods moved one after another. They shuttled to and fro the sirai like ghosts. Occasionally, they would attack and press with force. In an instant, they shattered more than hundreds of sirai. However, even though the sirai were shattered, King of Venomous Worms' recovery ability grew them back in the next moment. The 5 Sir Gods jostled and elbowed their ways. The sirai couldn't stop them at all. Sponsored content remove ads. But then, in King of Venomous Worms' huge bloodshot eyes, there was boundless blood light that flowed out. Secret skill of plenilune, scarlet light. Swoosh! The 2 rays of scarlet light burst out of King of Venomous Worms' 2 huge eyes. The 2 rays of light contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. Everywhere that they swept past, the void collapsed. The 2 rays of scarlet light shot the 2 Sir Gods at the front at the first instant. The 2 Sir Gods' bodies shook, but continued to pound forward the next moment. They live up to their name as Almighties. Although I have transformed into full-foot plenilune, you are still a 6-star ancient god after all. The power of scarlet light isn't enough to affect them. King of Venomous Worms said coldly, "Let me take care of them." Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn as boundless divine power billowed in madness. Ancient god unique skill, universal laws. There were brawny figures that substantiated behind Jian Wushuang, one after another. The figures were all in substantial form, and every single one of them gave out a fierce aura. There was a total of 1,000 figures. Destroy! Jian Wushuang wielded a long sword, and the ancient god shadows behind him wielded their swords simultaneously. Sponsored content remove ads. Wow, 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 wow. Countless sword lights were swung out at the same time. The sword lights covered heaven and earth, and all living things in the universe were visibly moved. If one had the support of boundless divine power, the power of the unique skill, universal laws would become extremely terrifying. For instance, even if an ordinary ancient god used universal laws, they could at most perform simple attacks like a wave and a punch. Even so, it would drain a huge amount of divine power. But if sword principle were to be performed with the embodiment of universal laws, the required divine power would be even higher. Naturally, the power was far beyond simple hits and punches. The ultimate divine power droplet in Jian Wushuang's body had already accumulated 99 drops. Hence, his divine power was as vast as an ocean, and he wasn't afraid to use them. He had utilized universal laws and performed a sword principle directly. The power was earth-shattering. The 5 Sir Gods who were pounding at him saw the pressing sword light flooded, and their faces changed. The sword light wasn't like the sirai earlier that could be scattered or dodged easily. Not only did the sword light cover a wide range, the power was also shocking. Hung. the terrifying whistle rang, and the power of the sword light exploded. The 5 Sir Gods had performed many tricks too. They smashed and blocked the sword light, and it quickly dispersed. Sponsored content remove ads. But suddenly, there were 2 rays of resplendent golden lights. They appeared before a Sir God, flexibly. The Sir God, who was holding a saber, had got a shock. He immediately wielded the saber in his hand and swung out 2 blade shadows. Then, the Tu Hong Jun golden sword flew out. This young man has quite a bit of a trick in his sleeve. According to the information, it only said that he manipulates 2 golden swords that are extremely fast in speed. He could attack and pressure opponents over and over again, so that his opponent has no chance to counterattack. However, from what it seems, his other skills are very impressive too. Let's not waste time. Let's kill him with that one move. The 5 Sir Gods exchanged a few comments and immediately came to a mutual agreement. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 5 figures suddenly appeared magically all together. Then, they stood in 5 corners surrounding Jian Wushuang. They flicked their wrists and took out a fiery red flag each. That is formation flag. Jian Wushuang saw the 5 fiery red flags, and his face instantly changed. In Eternal Chaotic World, there were many ferocious formations. These formations required a lot of time to prepare before performing and had to be set up meticulously. However, there were also some other unique formations, especially trap formations, killing formations, and that sort of formation that were rather easy to set up. Some formations could even be hidden in tokens or unique treasures. When required, it could be taken out from the token or unique treasure directly. As the 5 Sir Gods raised up their flags, it was obvious that they were setting up a formation. Formation, the killing formation of 9 cuts. The 5 Sir Gods' gazes were cold, and they dripped fresh blood into the fiery red flags. Suddenly, the fiery red flags grew tremendously and blended into the surrounding universe. There was an instant explosion of solemnity. Jian Wushuang was still standing on King of Venomous Worm's head, and he looked around. He saw that there was an extra layer of crimson shield in the surrounding void. The crimson shield engulfed him within, and he had no chance of escaping. I'm in big trouble. Jian Wushuang's looked troubled. Such an imposing, austere manner. The formation should be an impressive killing formation, and it is designed to kill you, King of Venomous Worms said in Jian Wushuang's head. Killing formation was a powerful killer move, and it was performed by 5 Sir Gods. Jian Wushuang felt extremely pressured. Jian Wushuang, you made us 5 Sir Gods team up to set up the killing formation of 9 cuts to kill you. Even if you die, you should be proud. It was the ugly-looking lattice, Mo Ying's cold voice. D***M in it. It's the killing formation of 9 cuts. King of Venomous Worms shouted. He obviously knew the origins of the killing formation. Move, kill him. Mo Ying's gaze was cold. In a corner of the void, the Sir God, who was using a saber, raised his saber and swung it in the direction of Jian Wushuang. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 1739. Give it his all buzz. All of a sudden, a frightening saber light appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Originally, this saber light was unleashed by that Sir God himself. However, with the amplification by the killing formation, its power rose by close to 10 times. Jian Wushuang raised the Blood Mountain sword in his hands. Rumble! A total of 61 crimson sword shadows was formed, and they superimposed onto one another instantly and formed a new sword shadow. After that, the sword shadow was swung out, and it clashed with the saber light head-on. In the end, bam! With a loud sound, the crimson sword shadow was dissipated almost instantly, and the saber light, which still contained a considerable amount of power, continued to head toward Jian Wushuang. Upon seeing that, Jian Wushuang's eyes turned grave. The huge body of the king of venomous worms, who was below him, rolled up fiercely, and countless tentacles appeared crazily. The saber light swept past everything and cut open thousands of tentacles of the king of venomous worms in one go. A considerable amount of power also struck the body of the king of venomous worms, which was filled with dark red scales, and this caused the king of venomous worms to feel extremely uncomfortable. It's too strong. This is the killing formation of 9 cuts. If the people who deployed this formation were to use any attack, its power would rise by close to 10 times after the amplification by the killing formation. Unless we are able to destroy this killing formation forcefully, no matter how many techniques we have, we will definitely die. Jian Wushuang, think of a way quickly. The king of venomous worms' voice was filled with impatience. Jian Wushuang's expression was ice cold, and he was looking at the 5 Sir Gods outside the killing formation. Among the 5 Sir Gods, the cold man who was holding a big hammer was about to attack. I have to give it my all. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and his eyes were glowing with determination. On his dark, golden, ancient god body, there were 6 stars in the space between his eyebrows. However, at that time, Jian Wushuang slapped his own forehead fiercely. Slap! All of a sudden, the quadrangular star at the highest point was broken into pieces. Ancient God's secret skill. Star destruction skill. This was a secret skill which would allow one's abilities to rise greatly for a short period of time by destroying one's own ancient god star. It was a secret skill that only ancient gods possessed. With one ancient god star destroyed, the ancient god power in Jian Wushuang's body skyrocketed in an instant, and even the king of venomous worms below him underwent a slight change at that moment. Rumble. Within the killing formation, the second attack had already appeared. It was an ancient big hammer. The big hammer had repelled the universe, and it contained power which could destroy the world. Upon seeing that, Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with a dark golden light, and an infinite amount of divine power gathered on his right hand's index finger instantly. Ancient God's 6th finger, sun corrosion. Boom! A dark golden, giant finger pierced the space forcefully and clashed with the ancient big hammer with lightning speed. A violent booming sound could be heard at once, and the frightening power spread in all directions. However, the power was stopped by the crimson wall of the killing formation, which acted as an obstacle. Jian Wushuang only felt an impact spreading toward him, which caused his body to stagger. After that, he retreated a few steps backward quickly. Even though my abilities rose greatly after I destroyed one ancient god star, I am still at a disadvantage. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned grave, and he understood immediately. Destroying only one star was totally not enough to have an impact on the killing formation at all. Humph! Jian Wushuang gave a cold hum, and his eyes became even more determined. His palm then slapped his own forehead again. Slap! Slap! 2 ancient god stars were destroyed at the same time. In addition to the 1 star that he had destroyed previously, it was power from destroying 3 stars. Rumble! The ancient god power in Jian Wushuang's body underwent a transformation in terms of quality immediately. At that moment, his abilities rose greatly. Straight after that, he took big steps forward. As he looked at the crimson palm that was forming within the killing formation, a vast amount of ancient god power burst forth. Break! With a furious cry, Jian Wushuang clenched his right fist and punched fiercely. The crimson palm also changed into a crimson flittering light and attacked with lightning speed. Bam! The sound shook the heavens, and the crimson flittering light dissipated. The crimson palm, which contained power that had been amplified greatly with the help of the killing formation of 9 cuts, was actually torn apart right away. What? Outside the killing formation, all the 5 Sir Gods revealed shocked expressions. They knew how powerful the killing formation of 9 cuts was. Moreover, all 5 of them were Sir Gods who were extremely strong. Their own abilities were already very unreasonable, and with the amplification of the killing formation of 9 cuts, their attack power would increase by close to 10 times. Under such circumstances, the attacks that they had unleashed randomly should have achieved the limit of a Sir God, and they should be very close to Emperor Gods. For such attacks, among the Sir Gods in the eternal chaotic world, there were not many of them who could repel them head-on. However, Jian Wushuang had actually torn apart their attacks, which had been amplified by the killing formation of 9 cuts. Those abilities were much stronger than they had expected. This Jian Wushuang has probably not used the secret skill of Star Palace yet. Damn it, he is a lot more difficult to deal with than the reports said. Use the Devil 9 cuts right away. Don't give him any chances. The 5 Sir Gods made a decision immediately. The 5 Sir Gods then took action at the same time straight away, and a great amount of divine power could be seen entering the killing formation crazily. Rumble. The void also shook madly. A vast amount of divine power gathered in the void of the killing formation. With the divine power gathering, a gigantic crimson god appeared in front of Jian Wushuang slowly. The devil god was 1,000 feet tall, and it was not considered very big. However, the aura that it emitted was already past the level of a Sir God, and it had achieved a completely new level. It was the level of an Emperor God. Its Devil 9 cuts. A Devil 9 cuts created by 5 Sir God experts working together will achieve the level of an Emperor God. Upon seeing that, the king of venomous worms became extremely terrified. Jian Wushuang's expression was also extremely grave. He could feel a huge amount of pressure from the Devil 9 cuts in front of him. King of venomous worms, please return to my body first, Jian Wushuang said. All right, the king of venomous worms nodded his head. If it were a Sir God-level intense battle, with the king of venomous worms already transformed into the full-foot plenilun, the king of venomous worms could indeed fight side by side with Jian Wushuang, and hence be of great help to Jian Wushuang. However, when the battle rose to the level of Emperor Gods, there would be no room for the king of venomous worms to step in. What he could do was stay within Jian Wushuang's body, and do his best to help Jian Wushuang recover his divine power and body. Within the killing formation, the extremely huge plenilun giant beast started to shrink with shocking speed immediately. After a short amount of time, he became a small worm beast and entered Jian Wushuang's body again. The killing formation became spacious at once. Jian Wushuang had an enormous amount of aura, and his body expanded until he was 1,000 feet tall. His body was glowing with dark golden light, and only 3 ancient god stars remained in the space between his eyebrows. The light that the 3 ancient god stars emitted was unusually dazzling as well. In front of Jian Wushuang was the 1,000-foot-tall Devil 9 cuts. The body of the Devil 9 cuts was scarlet in color, and it was as though a layer of armor had covered it. In addition, it possessed a tremendous amount of murderous intent. Chapter 1740. Devil 9 Cuts the killing formation was filled with an imposing, austere manner. The entire universe was frozen. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. Then, die! There was a bellow, and Jian Wushuang kept his look of 5 heads and 10 arms. Every single one of his arms was holding on to a long sword. He took a huge stride forward with terrifying power. Suddenly, he appeared in front of the Devil 9 cuts. Roar! Devil 9 cuts let out an earth-shattering roar. Merely the impact of the sound wave in his roar was enough to exterminate an expert on real god ranking list. Suddenly, Devil Nine Cuts wriggled its body, and there were muscular arms that extended. Just like Jian Wuzaheng, he had 10 arms as well. The 10 arms held a variety of divine weapons substantiated with divine power. Under the coverage of soaring rage, Devil Nine Cuts charged forward ferociously. The two lofty statues that were taller than 100 zhang in height collided in the middle of the formation. Bang! 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 Deafening roars resonated across the universe. Every roar brought about powerful explosions that could destroy the universe. Jian Wushuang wielded the 10 long swords in his hands and swung them continuously under the utilization of special attack. Although Devil Nine Cuts was like Jian Wushuang with 10 arms, close combat didn't rely on the number of arms. Jian Wushuang had collaborated it with his special attack skill, while Devil Nine Cuts hadn't. In terms of close-body combat, the Devil Nine Cuts that was controlled by the 5 Sir Gods was far behind. However, Devil Nine Cuts possessed the power of an emperor god. In that aspect, Jian Wushuang wouldn't be able to compare favorably even after he broke 3 ancient god stars. Hence, he definitely had the upper hand in terms of close-body combat. However, when they really fought, Jian Wushuang was slightly at a disadvantage. Just then, swoosh, swoosh, there were 2 rays of golden lights that suddenly glowed. The 2 rays of golden lights were on the left and on the right each. Regardless of speed or power, both were enhanced tremendously, and the lights slashed at Devil Nine Cuts' head. Devil Nine Cuts' 2 arms swung in madness and forced the 2 Hongjun golden swords back. However, Jian Wushuang seized the chance to swing out 2 sword lights that chopped off both the arms. Jian Wushuang chopped Devil Nine Cuts' 2 arms in collaboration with Hongjun golden swords. He had yet to celebrate when he saw Devil Nine Cuts let out an angry roar. There were boundless clouds churning, and a large amount of blood fog flooded in. Its power suddenly rose. At the same time, the 2 arms that Jian Wushuang had chopped off recovered quickly. Jian Wushuang, it's useless. Devil Nine Cuts is unrivaled within the killing formation of 9 cuts. No matter how severe the damage you cause, forget that you just cut off its 2 arms. Even if you chop off its head or slash it in half from the middle, it will recover immediately. King of Venomous Worm's voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. If you want to stay alive, there's only one way, which is to figure out a way to dissolve the killing formation of 9 cuts. Otherwise, no matter how much effort you put in, you'll only die in the end. I understand. Jian Wushuang's face was cold. As he fought, he glanced at the 5 Sir Gods outside the formation. The 5 Sir Gods were fully focused on controlling Devil Nine Cuts. I broke 3 ancient god stars in one go, and my power did increase tremendously. However, the power of ancient god stars couldn't be maintained long enough. I have to seize the chance. Jian Wushuang made a decision in his head. Hum, 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 hum. The 10 swords in Jian Wushuang's hands continued to swing out ferociously. Every stroke was like a mountain. In addition to that, Hongyun Golden Sword forcibly blocked Devil Nine Cuts' attack. But suddenly, Jian Wushuang quickly retreated. He retreated all of a sudden, and it was outside of Devil Nine Cuts, as well as the 5 Sir Gods' expectations. As he retreated, Jian Wushuang poured out the divine power in him. Secret skill of ancient god, thunder-attracting skill. Hung. Above the space storm that was trembling in balance was the vast sky. At that moment, there was a huge crack that appeared in the sky. In the crack, terrifying, thunderous power filled the air. Suddenly, there were countless life-destroying sacred thunders that suddenly descended. Every single strike of life, destroying sacred thunder, required a Sir God to treat it with extreme care. But then there were about 100 strikes of them descending at the same time. Plus, after the hundreds of life-destroying sacred thunder had descended but were yet to strike the body of Devil Nine Cuts, they merged together at a terrifying speed. Suddenly, a huge thunder dragon that was over 10 zhang thick roared as it pounded at Devil Nine Cuts. Thunder attracting skill, one of the 3 ancient gods' secret skills. As Jian Wushiheng broke 3 ancient god stars, and his power increased tremendously, the life-destroying sacred thunder he stirred was even more powerful. The thunder dragon instantly entangled the huge body of Devil Nine Cuts. The terrifying, thunderous power suddenly exploded. Devil Nine Cut wasn't afraid, but it waved his arms, intending to break the thunder dragon. Just as the huge thunder dragon entangled Devil Nine Cuts, Jian Wushuang's eyes were fixed on a person outside the killing formation. That person was the ugly lady who was good at assassination tricks. Mo Ying. Out of the 5 Sir Gods, she is the one good at assassination, and she is also the weakest in defense. Hence, she will be easiest to kill. There was a murderous intention in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The next moment, ancient god power swept out again. Secret skill of ancient god, moon-picking skill. The void instantly shook. One hand to flip the sky, and the other hand to pick the moon. The strongest secret skill for ancient god tribe to perform. Walala! The void outside the killing formation, where Mo Ying was suddenly shattered and collapsed like a piece of paper. An extremely terrifying yet unique strength ignored the hindrance of the killing formation of 9 cuts and caused an effect on Mo Ying. What? Mo Ying's face changed. She could feel the surrounding universe, space, and time pressuring her from all directions. The pressure was too strong. One should know that Jian Wushuang had performed moon-picking skill back in Divine Pond of Absolute Beginning when he wasn't giving his all, but he aimed at 4 Sir Gods and caused all of them to be injured. Among them, His Highness Mu Hong was severely injured. But then, Jian Wushuang broke 3 ancient god stars directly, and he was giving his all. The moon-picking skill that he had performed was only aiming at one person, and the person was a Sir God that was good at assassinations in the dark. This kind of Sir God wouldn't be strong in defense. Immediately, no. Mo Ying let out a shrill cry. Her body exploded into pieces under the pressure of space and time. In an instant, she vanished into thin air. Sir God Mo Ying, who had set up the killing formation, died, and the killing formation instantly collapsed. Chapter 1741, the 4th wave of attack. Not good. How is this possible? The remaining 4 Sir Gods were extremely terrified, and they no longer had a relaxed expression like before. It should be known that they had even used the trump card killing formation of 9 cuts that they had prepared. However, in the end, Jian Wushuang had killed Mo Ying in the killing formation of 9 cuts. How can this happen? How can he disregard the killing formation of 9 cuts and kill Mo Ying? What kind of technique is this? The 4 Sir Gods were filled with doubt. However, they did not know that the moon-picking skill that Jian Wushuang had used was the strongest secret skill of the ancient god clan, and it was really a very remarkable ability. This secret skill made use of the power of the universe, space, and time. Moreover, no matter where it was, as long as space and time existed in the piece of void, Jian Wushuang could use it. The killing formation of 9 cuts could indeed block all kinds of attacks. However, these attacks were merely material-based attacks. As for the moon-picking skill, which was a secret skill which made use of the universe, space, and time, the killing formation of 9 cuts was totally unable to block it. With the death of Mo Ying, the killing formation of 9 cuts had collapsed, and the Devil Nine Cuts, with a great amount of murderous intent and power, had dissipated at once. Jian Wushuang glowed with murderous intent. Die! With a shrill cry, the two Hong Jun golden swords which Jian Wushuang controlled turned into two shooting stars and moved with frightening speed. They then pierced the void and headed to the four Sir Gods with lightning speed. Upon seeing that, the four Sir Gods revealed terrified expressions in succession. Even the killing formation of 9 cuts had been broken through. As such, the fighting capabilities of Jian Wushuang, who had gone all out, were not something that the four of them could stop. Run! Without hesitation, the four Sir Gods started to escape. After all, they were all Sir God experts. Moreover, they were considered outstanding among the Sir Gods. If the four of them really wanted to escape, it would be difficult for Jian Wushuang to get all of them to stay. Even though it was not possible to get the four Sir Gods to stay, there was one person that Jian Wushuang absolutely had to keep. This person was Lei Chao. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang's body moved crazily, and his dark golden eyes stared persistently at Lei Chao, who was standing in the void. At that time, Lei Chao did not have a fearful expression at all. Since his soul had been controlled, he did not have his own consciousness since a long time ago. Hence, he was no different from being dead. Lei Chao! Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and grief flashed in his heart. However, even more determination flashed in his heart. I will definitely avenge you. Please leave peacefully. Jian Wushuang spoke softly and pointed out one of his fingers from his right hand. A flittering light shot out, and its speed was so fast that it was not an attack that Lei Chao could dodge. Moreover, Lei Chao did not dodge at all. The flittering light pierced through the space between Lei Chaos' eyebrows and took his life. Jian Wushuang appeared beside Lei Chao. With a swing of his hands, he put Lei Chaos' lifeless body into his Qian Kuan ring. After finishing that, Jian Wushuang sighed deeply, and his heart felt extremely heavy. As Lei Chaos' consciousness had been controlled, he was as good as dead. If he were to continue living like a puppet, it would be a humiliation and torture to him. As such, after knowing that, Jian Wushuang had made up his mind a long time ago to free Lei Chao. Acheron Palace. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and his eyes were filled with an infinite amount of murderous intent and fury. Jian Wushuang, the world has always been cruel. Please try to get over this. Moreover, now is not the time for you to grieve, the king of venomous worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. I know. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and his eyes were icy cold. The king of venomous worms was right. The current moment was not the time for him to grieve, because he himself could be killed by someone at any time. The Acheron Palace's way of doing things has always been very secretive, and they will not take action easily. However, the moment they take action, they will definitely have absolute confidence. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. However, what I have come across so far is unable to force me into a hopeless situation. The Acheron Palace has definitely arranged for something else. Since entering the dark storm, Jian Wushuang had encountered 3 waves of danger. The first wave was the assassination attempt by the ugly-looking woman at the start. The assassination was extremely frightening, and Jian Wushuang was almost killed. The second wave came from Lei Chao, where he tossed 2 God-destroying pearls abruptly. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang had always been careful, and he was prepared for it. If not, he would have ended up in an extremely miserable state. As for the third wave, it was the 5 Sir Gods attacking at the same time, and they even had used the killing formation of 9 cuts. These 3 waves of danger were extremely perilous, and they had indeed forced Jian Wushuang to go all out by making him unleash many of his trump cards and techniques. However, such an extent was still not considered perfectly safe. Hence, Jian Wushuang could confirm that the Acheron Palace still had the fourth wave of attack. The fourth wave of attack would be even more dangerous than the 3 waves of attacks from before. What will the fourth wave of attack be? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. In no time, he knew about it. Jian Wushuang was still standing at the battlefield from before, which was inside the dark storm. As for the 4 Sir Gods who deployed the killing formation of 9 cuts to kill him, they had escaped originally. However, at that time, they headed toward Jian Wushuang again. Moreover, it was not just the 4 of them. At the center of the 4 of them, there was a shadow which was covered by a crimson robe. Under the escort of the 4 Sir Gods, the crimson-robed man walked out slowly and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang openly. After that, he stopped moving. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's expression became unusually ugly. An emperor god expert. The corners of Jian Wushuang's mouth were a bit distorted, and he could not help but exclaim in admiration. As expected of the Acheron Palace, they would not take action easily. However, if they were to take action, they would definitely not fail. This rumor was really true. After sending 5 Sir Gods to team up and deploy the killing formation of 9 cuts, it was still not enough. They had actually secretly arranged for another Emperor God. It was an Emperor God. It was the level of the Star Palace Master, as well as King Luozhan, who was an 8-star ancient god. Although there seemed to be only 1 step between an Emperor God and a Sir God, the gap between them was not smaller than the gap between a real god and Sir God. For example, the Devil 9 cuts from before, which was only just created with 5 Sir Gods teaming up under the aid of the killing formation of 9 cuts, possessed the fighting capabilities of an Emperor God. However, the Devil 9 cuts had only achieved the level of an Emperor God in terms of strength, power, and other areas. However, when comparing close-quarters techniques, trump cards, and secret skills, it was completely incomparable to an actual Emperor God. However, even though that was the case, it was still not something that Jian Wushuang could fight with. He could only rely on his own close-quarters combat abilities to deal with the Devil 9 cuts. After that, he had found an opportunity to kill Mo-ing, who had deployed the formation. With that, the Devil 9 cuts had dissipated by itself. As for a real Emperor God expert, he was many times stronger than the Devil 9 cuts. Moreover, the Emperor God in front of him did not look normal. Looks like this time around, it will not be as simple as just going all out. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, and with a flip of his palm, a picture scroll appeared in his hands. As Jian Wushuang tossed the picture scroll into the void, the big universe started to undergo changes right away. Chapter 1742, Emperor God Shui Gu. 5 Sir Gods teamed up and set up the killing formation of 9 cuts, but couldn't kill you. On the contrary, you killed one of us instead. Jian Wushuang, you are much stronger than we, Acheron Palace, imagined. Luckily, we of Acheron Palace have prepared room for a maneuver. A creepy and hoarse voice was heard from the person in the crimson robe. As his voice reverberated, the person in the crimson robe flipped his palm and took out a crimson token. The crimson token gave out a strange aura. As the person in the crimson robe clenched, pack, the token broke, and a billowing strength covered Jian Wushuang instantly. This is Jian Wushuang's eyes fixed, and his consciousness slowly immersed. It was as though he almost fell asleep. Jian Wushuang, quickly wake up. This is a soul control trick. Quickly wake up. King of venomous worms, roar of fear and anger rang in Jian Wushuang's head. The vigorous soul fire in Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness was burning, and there was a sharp ache that suddenly hit him. Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated with horror, and his features turned ferocious. You want to conduct soul control on me? dream. Jian Wushuang was roaring in madness as he tried to shake off the unique situation. After a while, everything settled down. Jian Wushuang continued to stand there as he panted. His face grew unusually solemn. It seems like I failed. The person in the crimson robe glanced at Jian Wushuang, and he sneered, but that's right. After all, he's an inverse cultivator. He nurtured his soul fire long ago. He naturally wouldn't be as easy to control as Lei Chao. Be *starred. There was billowing murderous intention in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He could tell that Lei Chao was soul-controlled by the person in the crimson robe before him. However, soul control wasn't something he could perform, and it was only contained in the token. The person in the crimson robe only played a guiding role, to be able to save a soul attack in a token and activate it by another person, and it still could control Lei Chao, who is an expert on real God ranking list. The person who performed the soul control is much stronger than I imagined, King of Venomous Worms said. Previously, King of Venomous Worms had thought the expert who performed soul control would be an emperor god who was good at soul attacks. However, from the looks of it, he wouldn't be an ordinary emperor god. As I couldn't soul control you, I have to kill you personally. The person in the crimson smiled leisurely, and there was another crimson trident in his hand. Go! The person in the crimson robe waved his hand, and the crimson trident quivered suddenly and charged at Jian Wushuang. The stab brought about boundless power of the universe, and crimson light flooded in. It was terrifyingly dark. Jian Wushuang felt that he was locked in on by the trident. No matter how he dodged, even if he ran to the end of the world, he wouldn't be able to dodge the trident's attack. In particular, the terrifying power that the trident contained made Jian Wushuang's hair stand. Ancient God unique skill, 8 divine mountains. Jian Wushuang bellowed, and the divine power in his body flowed out. He broke 3 ancient god stars, and the increased, boundless ancient god power had yet to disperse. But then it was venting out like a tsunami. Bang, 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 bang. 8 lofty golden sacred mountains appeared from nowhere. Every sacred mountain was lofty and far bigger than before. It formed 8 layers of barriers in front of Jian Wushuang. It was the strongest defense unique skill of ancient god tribe. It was performed by Jian Wushuang after he broke 3 stars. It was powerful enough for a Sir God to feel hopeless. However, the crimson trident hit the 8 golden sacred mountains directly. Bang, bang, bang. 8 continuous bangs, and the 8 lofty sacred mountains only hindered the trident for a while before it pierced them. The crimson trident that contained shocking power flew at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Then there was Sirai that shot out like lightning. King of Venomous Worms' body reappeared again and instantly formed a huge net. Hung. The huge net shattered and countless Sirai strangled into pieces. There were parts of King of Venomous Worms' body that were torn apart as well. However, the trident's power remained as it flew at Jian Wushuang. There was a chilly gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He gripped Blood Mountain Sword in his hand tightly. Then a boundless divine power flowed out, and he slashed. Dang! There was a loud thud, and Jian Wushuang's body shook vigorously. Blood Mountain Sword nearly fell out of his hand as he moved backwards from the impact. He took a dozen steps back before he steadied himself again. After he stopped, there was blood flowing out of the corner of his mouth. He's too strong. This is the power of an emperor god. Jian Wushuang was astonished. He gave his all and broke 3 stars to perform 8 divine mountains. However, they were instantly pierced while the defense skill that King of Venomous Worms had performed was broken down directly as well. Then The stroke that he had cast with full force flew off as well, and he was injured. It was merely a casual hit by the person in the crimson robe. His one hit was so powerful. No way. An ordinary emperor god won't be this powerful. He is definitely an expert among emperor gods. King of Venomous Worm's voice was heard in Jian Wushuang's head, and his voice was solemn. Experts among emperor gods. Jian Wushuang muttered. He subconsciously looked at the crimson trident in the person in the crimson robe's hand. Then his eyes dilated with shock. An emperor god using a crimson trident, and it is so powerful. Shuegu, you are emperor god Shuegu. Jian Wushuang shouted. Hee, it seems like you recognized me. The person in the crimson robe let out a burst of strange laughter, but didn't deny it. It's really him. Jian Wushuang's face immediately grew grave. He had been in Sanctuary Alliance for so long, and he had a simple understanding of the Almighty's in eternal chaotic world. He did that so that when he was wandering outside, he could identify those who were more powerful and make a move earlier in order to minimize the possibility of having a conflict. Among the Almighty's in eternal chaotic world, there was Emperor God Shuegu. Emperor Shuegu kept himself to himself, and he was evil in disposition. He was truly a devil, but he happened to be terrifyingly powerful. Among emperor gods, he wasn't at the top, but he was in the middle upper range. The divine weapon that Emperor God Shuegu was using was the Crimson Trident. He was the only one among emperor gods in eternal chaotic world that used a strange divine weapon like the Crimson Trident. Hence, when Jian Wushuang saw the Crimson Trident, he recognized him immediately. No wonder Emperor God Shuegu rejected Sanctuary Alliance's invitation so many times, and he was even too lazy to bother with Sanctuary Alliance. He turned out to be Acheron Palace's man. Jian Wushuang was terrified and angry. Chapter 1743, A Fight to the Death. Since you have recognized me, all the more you have to die. Emperor God Shuegu's eyes were filled with an infinite amount of murderous intent. He was someone from the Acheron Palace, and this was a secret that no one knew. However, at that time, Jian Wushuang knew about it. Die. Boom. A frightening aura rose from Emperor God Shuegu's body, and the whole universe turned into a sea of blood that was filled with countless skeletons in an instant. As for Emperor God Shuegu, he was the emperor who ruled the sea of blood. He was holding his crimson trident with one hand tightly. Similarly, the trident was filled with a great amount of vigor, and the void shook wildly. After that, the crimson trident attacked again. This time around, when the crimson trident attacked, it increased in size at the same time, and it looked like a trident that could destroy the world. Comparing powers, it was many times stronger than before. Upon seeing that an unprecedented amount of madness glowed within Jian Wushuang's eyes, his ancient god body was standing in the void proudly. At that moment, his right hand slapped his own forehead again. It should be known that of the 6 ancient god stars in the space between his eyebrows, he had already destroyed 3 of them previously. The star destruction skill was a secret skill used by ancient gods to allow them to go all out. If only 1 or 2 stars were destroyed, it would be easy to restore them. However, if 3 stars were destroyed, it would be more difficult to restore them. However, slap, slap, slap. Sounds that sounded like constellations bursting could be heard repeatedly. At that moment, the 3 remaining ancient god stars in the space between Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were destroyed at the same time. In addition to the 3 stars that had been destroyed previously, Jian Wushuang had destroyed all 6 stars. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang had given his all. He wanted to fight to the death. Come. A furious roar came out of Jian Wushuang's mouth, and it reverberated across the big universe. With all 6 stars destroyed, Jian Wushuang's ancient god power rose again to a completely new level instantly. Such a stage, combined with Jian Wushuang's stage 2 ultimate real god's divine power, made his divine power similar to that of a normal emperor god. Rumble. A great amount of divine power moved about, and it gathered at the index finger of Jian Wushuang's right hand. At that time, the index finger of his right hand had completely become a crystal jade, and the crystal jade was dark gold in color. Ancient God's 7th finger. Vault of Heaven's finger. Jian Wushuang opened his mouth, and he was extremely imposing. All of a sudden, the index finger of his right hand, which had completely changed into a crystal jade, was pointed. The instant it was pointed out, the void in front of him burst open, and a space vortex which covered tens of thousands of miles appeared from it. The space vortex was twisting everything in the universe, and even the dark storm at the side twisted mercilessly. Rustle. More than half of the space storm, which originally covered the triangular island, was twisted instantly. The ancient god's finger, which was one of the ancient god clans for unique skills, contained a total of 9 fingers, and every finger was more shocking than before. Just the 6th finger, the sun corrosion finger, was already earth-shaking. For the 7th finger, it would be very difficult for even 7-star ancient gods to use it under normal circumstances. Similarly, Jian Wushuang could not use it previously. It was not until all his 6 stars were destroyed, and that his ancient god power rose greatly like never before, that he could use the 7th finger for real. The Vault of Heaven's finger, a finger that could destroy the Vault of Heaven. A giant dark golden finger came out from the space vortex, which covered tens of thousands of miles, and it clashed head-on with the incoming crimson trident, which had expanded crazily right away. With the clash, there were no violent booming sounds like before. However, the instant both attacks clashed, millions of miles of the surrounding void were torn apart into pieces. For example, the dark storm, which had already been hit to the point that it almost fell apart, was torn into pieces at that moment. In addition, the whole triangular island was completely exposed. In the void, 2 shocking powers were still opposing each other crazily. However, all of a sudden, boom, a great amount of aura descended from the void on top abruptly. Emperor God Shui Gus' expression changed. After that, he raised his head abruptly and saw that the Vault of Heaven on top had undergone some changes for some reason. The Vault of Heaven had already changed into an extremely beautiful world. The world contained mountains, rivers, birds singing, and the fragrance of flowers. The most eye-catching thing was the 9 lofty continents that existed within the world. For the 9 lofty continents, each of them was extremely huge and vast, and the supreme aura that it emitted caused even Emperor God Shuigu to be slightly fearful. This is a chaos divine treasure? Emperor God Shui Gus' eyes shrank. Chaos divine treasures were the most powerful and valuable treasures in the eternal chaotic world. Even almighties and real gods did not have the right to possess them. For example, many Sir Gods, which included some Sir Gods with weaker abilities, did not have the right to possess a chaos divine treasure. As for Emperor God Shuigu himself, he possessed a chaos divine treasure, and it was the crimson trident in his hands. The trident was extremely powerful, and with its power, Emperor God Shuigu could be said to be someone powerful among the Emperor Gods. However, the trident was merely an attack-type divine weapon. Among many kinds of divine weapons, attack-type divine weapons were no doubt worth the least. However, the extremely beautiful continent which had appeared on top had caused Emperor God Shui Gus' eyes to become scorching hot. It's indeed a chaos divine treasure. Moreover, it's a kind of chaos divine treasure that is extremely special, and it is worth so much that it is shocking. Emperor God Shwegus shook. He knew how valuable Chaos Divine treasures were. For his trident, he had paid a huge price for it. He had obtained it by luck after experiencing many life and death situations when he had entered a battlefield deep inside the second layer. Even though it was only an attack-type divine weapon, it was still enough to make many almighties envious of him. However, for the Chaos Divine treasure that Jian Wushuang took out, looking at its worth alone, it was worth at least 10 times more than his crimson trident. Haha, this is really not a wasted trip. Emperor God Shuegu was extremely excited. His eyes, which were looking at Jian Wushuang, became filled with even more murderous intent. You wish to kill me and snatch my treasure away? Jian Wushuang could see through Emperor God Shuegu's thoughts completely, and he grinned hideously. That will depend on whether you can survive this. Mountain River map. Mountain River as palm, and 9 province as seal. Jian Wushuang uttered every word with a pause, and every word contained a special demonic power. In the vast vault of heaven, within the world of the picture scroll, which contained a total of 9 lofty continents, one of the continents was as if it were completely alive, and it freed itself from the world of the picture scroll. After that, it descended slowly. Rumble. The universe shook, and all beings trembled with fear. This power, even if it were Emperor God Shuegu, when he saw the continent that was descending, his eyes became filled with fear. 9 province of the universe, Qing province as the seal. First seal split the heavens. Boom. The lofty continent descended completely. Mountain River map, the first seal of the 9 seals of 9 province, had descended. In a split second, all the living creatures in the world submitted themselves. Chapter 1744, Life and Death in a Split Second. Haha, interesting. There was excitement shimmering in Emperor God Shuegu's eyes. He noticed the terrifying power contained in the lofty continent. Not only was he not afraid, he was filled with excitement. The stronger the power of the lofty continent represented, the more amazing the Chaos Divine treasure was. And he definitely has to get a hold of the Chaos Divine treasure. Secret skill of bloodthirst, ternary in one breath. Emperor God roared, and there were 3 huge, lofty shadows of exotic beast. The 3 shadows were unique, but they shared a similarity. They were all soaring with rage. The crimson trident in his hand let out 3 different powers simultaneously. Suddenly, the power burst out. Heaven and earth were instantly silent. In the unprecedented silence, the lofty continent that was descending from the sky collided with the crimson trident. Rumble. Heaven fell, and the earth was raised. The huge triangle island below Jian Wushuang and Emperor God Shuegu started falling and immersed under the sea. The island vanished into thin air along with the dark storm. The 4 figures in black robe were in the void, far away. They felt the collision of 2 terrifying power, and the 4 Sir Gods revealed a terrified expression. However, just as Jian Wushuang exchanged blows with Emperor God Shuegu using Mountain River map, at the bottom of the sea in the vast Buddhist demon, see a young man's consciousness, which was asleep for God knows how long, suddenly woke up with a start. This is the aura of 9 province continent. 9 province continent that was refined and made into treasure many years ago. It was in the hands of 7-star Black Sect, and it was named Mountain River Map. 7-star Black Sect's Mountain River Map appeared here. Ha! God is helping me. Go, kill all of the nonentities, and bring back all their treasures. An ancient voice spoke, and a black shadow departed from the deep ends of Buddhist Demon Sea at an unbelievably fast speed in the direction of Jian Wushuang and Emperor God Shuegu. They remained in the void above the Triangle Island, but the Triangle Island had already vanished into thin air. the two terrifying power were clashed vigorously and shook the earth. But suddenly, the three rays of crimson light burst out like three bloody suns that swept out all hindrances. The lofty continent that descended from the scroll-painting world, although it was magnificent, cracked into three parts under the massive hit of three bloody suns and shattered completely. The sight made Jian Wushuang's expression grow distressed. He didn't perform Mountain River Map often, but every time he performed it, it never disappointed him. But then, the first seal of Mountain River Map that he had performed with his all was broken apart by his enemy. Emperor God Shui, who lives up to his name. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but compliment. However, he didn't feel hopeless. 9 province 9 seals, and he was merely performing the first seal then. One should know that his divine power was great, and he had already broken 6 ancient god stars. Then, he was already qualified to perform the second seal. The last trump card. Jian Wushuang's eyes were flashing, and he fixed his gaze upon Emperor God Shuigu. At the next moment, the vast power of stars instantly swept out from his body. Secret skills of Star Palace was finally cast. Secret skills of Star Palace, River Mountain Map, Star Destruction skill were all his biggest trump cards. He wouldn't perform those techniques hastily. But then, Jian Wushuang spared nothing. 9 province of the universe. You province, as the seal, hack the earth. Terrifying divine power billowed. Rumble! Heaven and earth shook vigorously. From the sky, in the beautiful scroll painting, there was another lofty continent that descended. The lofty continent was much bigger than the first. It was much loftier and more imposing. It was far beyond the first piece of the continent, far stronger. 9 province 9 seals. First split the heavens, secondly hacked the earth. One was supposed to be stronger than another seal. Most importantly, the second seal was backed up with the power of stars. Jian Wushuang performed the second episode of Secret Skill of Star Palace with all his strength. In an instant, the order of Heaven Way seemed to be breaking apart. Under the Hack the Earth seal, Emperor God Shuigu, who had been smiling madly, finally stiffened. In the distant void, the 4 Sir God experts turned pale. Even though they were far away, they could feel the power contained in the Hack the Earth seal. The power struck fear in them, and they were shivering hopelessly. It's impossible for him to be that strong. Emperor God Shuigus' hair instantly stood, and his face distorted in agony. Hum, hum, hum. Emperor God Shuigus' body let out 3 roars. Then he spat a mouthful of blood. His blood wasn't red, but a scalding gold. The mouthful of scalding gold blood fell onto his crimson trident. Then the crimson trident instantly became unusually violent. Drive weapon with blood, slaughter a god with 100 ghosts. Secret skill, ternary splits heaven and earth. Hum, a terrifying power suddenly exploded from the crimson trident. Emperor God, Shui God, had boundless divine power and energy flow out of his body. Obviously, Emperor God Shuigu gave his all too. Kill! A loud roar that sounded like it was outside the highest heavens struck fear into them. The 3 tips of the crimson trident flooded with crimson light. The crimson trident suddenly increased in size. It was originally the size of an ordinary divine weapon, but it grew in size by tens of thousands of times and became an unbelievable mountain. The 3 resplendent yet enchanting crimson lights burst out and hit the lofty continent that descended brutally. Life or death depends on this hit. Jian Wushuang looked determined, and there was unprecedented insanity on his face. He already flashed all his trump cards and skills. He had to brew his strongest hit. If the hit were to kill Emperor God Shuigu, he would be able to live. On the contrary, if Emperor God Shuigu were to survive the hit, he would definitely die. Emperor God Shuegu was as mad as he was. He obviously knew of the situation as well. Their lives and deaths were decided by the last hit. It was either life or death in a split second. In the void, the crimson trident that grew to the size of a mountain collided with the lofty continent that descended. Bang! The space-time instantly paused, the yin and yang crisscrossed, and the universe fell apart. A black hole that covered the expanse of 1,000,000 miles appeared from nowhere. The black hole swallowed everything in the universe with no mercy. The four Sir Gods afar revealed an unprecedentedly terrified expression in that moment as they could feel the horror of the black hole. If they weren't far off, the black hole could totally strangle them to death. Chapter 1745. Very dissatisfied, the space black hole, which spread across millions of miles, disappeared, and the universe regained its peace gradually. Everything had come to an end. Jian Wushuang was standing at the void, and he had a ghastly pale expression. The level of the mountain river map was too high. If he had only unleashed the first move, it would still be all right. However, Jian Wushuang had unleashed the second move at all costs. Although he had unleashed it forcefully, it still placed a huge burden on his body. The current him only felt that all his internal organs were damaged, and he was in extreme pain. However, Jian Wushuang couldn't care less about his own injuries. His eyes were glowing brilliantly, and he was staring persistently at the void in front of him. He was looking at the position that Emperor God Shuegu was in previously. When he saw the void and that Emperor God Shuegu's body was still standing there, his body shook fiercely. Not dead. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists, and he was filled with an infinite amount of dissatisfaction. He had already given it his all by unleashing all his trump cards as well as techniques and staking everything on one attack. However, in the end, Emperor God Shuegu was still not dead yet. As expected of an Emperor God expert, Jian Wushuang laughed with grief. Jian Wushuang, run away quickly! The king of venomous worms' fierce roar echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. However, Jian Wushuang was in agony. When did he not wish to run away? If he were able to run away, he would have done so a long time ago. If not, why would he stay behind and stake everything on one attack to fight it out with Emperor God Shuegu? The most important thing was that it was impossible for him to run away. His abilities were not too bad, and if he were to use the secret skill of dragon blood, his speed would surpass many Sir Gods. However, in front of an Emperor God, his speed was considered insignificant. He also knew that Emperor God Shuegu had always been proficient in speed to begin with. Moreover, the crimson trident in Emperor God Shuegu's hands could lock onto time and space. Hence, this would absolutely not give him any opportunity to escape. Under such circumstances, there was no way for him to escape. There was no way previously. At present, there was no way as well. In front of Jian Wushuang, Emperor God Shuegu was indeed not dead. However, he looked extremely miserable. The crimson robe on his body was filled with blood, his face was deathly pale like paper, and his aura had decreased greatly. It was obvious that he was seriously injured as well. However, under such circumstances, Emperor God Shuegu was neither terrified nor furious. Instead, he was extremely excited and delighted. Haha, Jian Wushuang, I really did not expect you to actually have such a nature-defying treasure. You are merely a real god. To allow a real god to unleash such frightening power to the point that it almost killed me, this treasure is 100 times more valuable than my trident. No, it's 1,000 times, 10,000 times. I am very grateful to you for giving me such a wonderful treasure. Hence, I will let you die immediately. Emperor God Shuegu was roaring madly, and the crimson trident in his hands glowed with a dazzling scarlet color. He then moved his legs and approached Jian Wushuang slowly. "Is this the end?" Jian Wushuang muttered, and his eyes were filled with hopelessness. The king of venomous worms, who was in his body, went silent as well. The king of venomous worms knew that Jian Wushuang had already reached his limit. He had already unleashed all his moves and trump cards. In addition, the star power, as well as the power he gained from destroying all his 6 ancient god stars, were completely depleted from using the seal back then. If the current him were to face Emperor God Shuigu again, he would not have any power to resist. However, all of a sudden, wait, the king of venomous worms gave a shrill cry. Jian Wushuang's eyes also shrank fiercely, and he looked at Emperor God Shuigu. All of a sudden, the black and boundless sea surface behind Emperor God Shuigu rose. A black shadow then appeared out of thin air, and it was right behind Emperor God Shuigu. Emperor God Shuigu seemed to have noticed it as well, and he turned his body immediately. After turning his body, his eyes became filled with shock. What he saw was a large, fierce-looking mouth that had already opened. The fierce-looking mouth contained 2 sharp, cold, and long protruding teeth. Moreover, the big mouth was right in front of him, and it headed toward him. No. Emperor God Shuigu roared extremely loudly like never before. Although he tried to struggle with all his might to escape, he was still unable to. When the fierce-looking mouth closed, Emperor God Shuigu's body disappeared completely, and what replaced him was a huge pitch-black head. The head was filled with black scales, and it looked like a dragon as well as a snake at the same time. In addition, there was also 1 horn on its head. This is a flood dragon from the ancient past. A terrified and astonished voice came from the king of venomous worms. The king of venomous worms was a full-foot plenilune, which was a supreme existence of the plenilune clan. However, when it saw the pitch-black enormous monster in front of it, it was horrified from the bottom of its heart. A flood dragon from the ancient past, an extremely frightening existence. As soon as it appeared, there was no room for Emperor God Shuigu to struggle at all, and he was killed right away. Such a scene was seen clearly by Jian Wushuang and the 4 Sir Gods who were in a void not too far away. At once, the 5 of them became extremely frightened. Run! Run away quickly! There is no room for Emperor God Shuigu to struggle at all. This is too frightening. The 4 black-robed Sir Gods did not hesitate at all, and they turned around to escape madly at once. All of them had also unleashed their speed to the best of their abilities. However, the moment they moved, the giant head of the flood dragon, which had appeared from the sea surface, also turned around at once. At the same time, it opened its big mouth again. Buzz! Shockingly cold air spread across the area and covered the whole universe in an instant. It had also covered the 4 Sir Gods. Originally, the 4 Sir Gods were escaping with all their might. Moreover, the 4 of them had split up. However, all of a sudden, the 4 of them stopped moving in midair. The 4 of them opened their eyes wide, and they were filled with an infinite amount of fear. However, a layer of frost had already covered their bodies, and the frost spread continuously. In the end, the 4 of them were turned into ice sculptures. When a simple air current passed by, the 4 ice sculptures broke into pieces at once and dissipated across the universe. With just 1 face-off, not even a fragment of the 4 Sir Gods who had besieged Jian Wushuang previously remained. After that, the giant head of the ancient flood dragon looked at Jian Wushuang fiercely. The pair of eyes on its head, which were glowing with a thin layer of gray light, then locked on to Jian Wushuang hastily like 2 electric arcs. Murderous intent also flashed past its eyes. Whoosh! Jian Wuxuang did not see how the flood dragon moved at all. However, the flood dragon had already appeared in front of him. At the same time, it opened its fierce-looking mouth again, and its target this time around was Jian Wuxuang. Just like Emperor God Shuigu, Jian Wuxuang did his best to escape. However, at the instant the flood dragon opened its mouth, Jian Wuxuang realized that the space and time that he was in had been completely sealed off. His body was also frozen, and he could not move at all. He could only look on as the head of the flood dragon headed toward him. "Am I going to die?" Jian Wuxuang murmured. "Since I am about to die, it is better for me to die in the hands of this ancient flood dragon rather than at the hands of the experts of the Acheron Palace. However, it's a pity that I have not found Lung Rushue and rescued Shuang'er yet. In addition, I have also not found out about Master's real identity, and am going to die just like this. How dissatisfying." Chapter 1746, Armageddon Bang. The shockingly loud bang wasn't the noise from Jian Wuxuang being eaten by the ancient flood dragon. It was the noise of a fierce hit on the flood dragon's head. It then immersed itself under the sea. What? Jian Wuxuang, who was originally hopeless, opened his eyes widely and watched everything that happened before his eyes in shock. He saw a blurry figure in the void before him. The figure was about 10,000 zhang tall. It was enormously huge. Although he couldn't see the appearance clearly, he reckoned that it should be an elderly from the outline of the figure. But who was the elderly? When did he appear? Roar. An angry roar that sounded like a dragon's roar shook heaven and earth vigorously. It stirred up billowing waves in the entire surface of Dark Sea region, and the ancient flood dragon revealed itself. Its huge body was not only one size bigger than King of Venomous Worm. The huge head was extremely ferocious, while its faint gray pupils were covered in coldness and murderous intention, and it was looking at the huge shadow that was 10,000 zhang tall. "Hee little thing, you do not deserve to make me take action personally. Let the one behind you come out." The blurry shadow that embodied an elderly let out a hearty laugh. His laughter was heard from all directions, and it contained a unique magic power. As his voice stopped, crack! In the vast void, there was suddenly a huge black hand that pierced through. It was huge and towering like a boundless mountain. Then a shadow that was 10,000 zhang tall stepped out of the black hole and stood opposite the blurry elderly in the distance. The moment the black shadow appeared, the ancient flood dragon that was giving out a chilliness immediately became tame. Obviously, the black shadow was the master of the ancient flood dragon. What are all these? Jian Wuxuang was surprised. He knew clearly that the ancient flood dragon could kill an emperor god easily, and it was not something he could match evenly. But then there were suddenly two blurry shadows that were 10,000 zhang tall and much scarier than the ancient flood dragon. The two shadows were obviously substantiated with consciousness, but not their original bodies. However, as they stood there, Jian Wuxuang felt that besides Long Qi and his master that he had come across in the independent space in the 8th layer back then, there was no one in the whole world that could win against him. But why would the shadows of the superb existences suddenly appear in Buddhist Demon Sea? Jian Wuxuang was quivering in fear, and he stayed behind the shadow of the elderly. He didn't dare to move an inch. King of Venomous Worms in his body was frightened and remained silent too. "One-star man, you old man, you are awakened to—" the blurry shadow said under black armor, while the ancient flood dragon stayed by his side. His deep voice reverberated in Buddhist Demon Sea, and it stirred stormy waves all over Buddhist Demon Sea. "Ha! In the same region, as you are awakened, how can I continue to stay asleep?" The blurry shadow that the elder took the form of, also known as the One-Star Man, burst out into a hearty laugh. So, what if you woke up? I'm killing these few non-entities. What does it have to do with you? The shadow in black armor asked coldly. You can kill anyone else, but the young man behind me has Mountain River Map, and he knows the secret skill of 7-Star. He definitely shared a relationship with 7-Star Black Sect. Do you think he'll let you kill him? 1-Star Man laughed. You want, and I can't kill him? The shadow in a black armor let his murderous intention bellow. As he finished his sentence, he took a huge stride forward. With just one step, Jian Wushuang felt as though he had traversed 2 different eras. The shadow in black armor appeared in front of the blurry shadow that the 1-Star Man took the form of. Then he simply punched. On the other hand, 1-Star Man waved his hand casually. Bang! There was a loud bang, and the universe broke apart. The huge sea that covered an expanse of tens of millions of miles instantly sunk in, and it sunk all the way down to the bottom of the sea. It even revealed the reefs in the seabed. There were countless tsunamis, and every single wave was more than 1,000,000 zhang high as it dispersed in all directions madly. Jian Wushuang was right in the middle of the tsunami, and he felt the tsunami shattering everything like breaking dead wood. It stirred a commotion up in his heart as well. Merely a brief hit had caused such unbelievable power. Just how strong were the 2 people that were fighting? The experts of great emperor level in eternal chaotic world were nothing. Jian Wushuang muttered. Plus, the 2 of them hadn't come in person but merely in the form of shadow that they had substantiated temporarily. Bang! 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 The roars spread over continuously, and every roar came with boundless waves. The vigorous battle between the 2 made the universe seem to pale into insignificance. If one wasn't the level of Great Emperor, he couldn't even think of getting involved in such a vigorous battle. Just like Jian Wushuang, forget about getting involved. He couldn't even open his eyes when he was in the boundless tsunami. He could only feel the boundless power explode madly. 1-Star Man, you really want to go against me? An angry voice roared through the universe. Ha ha, so what if I go against you? It's not like we never fought before. Not only do I want to keep this young man alive, I also want to provide him with an opportunity to let him grow stronger faster. 1-Star Man's voice was loud and clear. Young man, look closely. Jian Wushuang, who was in the boundless tsunami, forced his eyes open. As he opened his eyes, he happened to see a huge hand that seemed to press the entire sky, the entire universe. The huge hand was gray, and it was blurry. Besides the boundless divine power that it contained, there was another kind of energy. The energy was the power of reincarnation, constellation theurgy, extermination palm of reincarnation. Rumble. The huge hand descended magnificently. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded at the sight. He stared at the huge hand, and the huge hand continuously appeared in his head and continuously magnified in size. In the end, it was completely sealed in his memory. Hung. The power of the huge hand exploded, and the shadow in black armor knelt down from the slab. The shadow dispersed slightly. Be *starred. A roar with boundless rage spread, and the shadow in black armor substantiated again. Blackscale, kill that boy. The shadow in black armor roared, while the ancient flood dragon that was fighting alongside him suddenly let out a chilly gleam. Then, the chilliness turned into an air current and froze the void. Then, it bypassed 1-Star Man's huge shadow and shot at Jian Wushuang. Be careful! 1-Star Man roared. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Chapter 1747. The power of a throw. Jian Wushuang had seen with his own eyes that when the ancient flood dragon had released cold air from its mouth, the cold air had annihilated the 4 Sir Gods instantly. The cold air from the mouth of the ancient flood dragon was heading toward him. As its speed was too fast, Jian Wushuang had no way of dodging it, and he also did not have the ability to dodge it. The cold air covered his body instantly, and at that moment, it was as if the cold air wanted to freeze his body, mind, and consciousness completely. He then trembled with fear from the bottom of his heart. Humph! Jian Wushuang snorted coldly. In such a situation which was of great concern to life and death, Jian Wushuang remained extremely calm like never before. His divine power rose madly, and it was as if a volcano had erupted. His divine power then blocked the corrosion from the coldness. The coldness was extremely powerful, and it destroyed Jian Wushuang's divine power easily. However, Jian Wushuang had a great amount of divine power. Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator, and he had also achieved the limit of stage 2 ultimate real God, where he had already precipitated a total of 99 ultimate divine power water droplets. With 99 ultimate divine power water droplets, the amount of divine power that he possessed was many times more than that of an emperor god. With such a great amount of divine power appearing continuously to replace the dissipated divine power, it hindered the coldness madly. At the same time, it was also depleting the power of the coldness continuously. I must block it at all costs. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes tightly, and he was roaring furiously in his heart. At the same time that his ultimate divine power was blocking the corrosion from the coldness, his divine power was also being depleted at a shocking speed. Such a rate of depletion was even faster than when he had unleashed the secret skill of dragon blood with his full power. After just a short amount of time, he had already depleted 90% of the ultimate divine power in his body. Finally, the coldness dissipated gradually. Jian Wushuang's body, which was close to being completely frozen, also turned back to normal slowly. I have blocked it. Jian Wushuang was panting heavily, and he still had lingering fears. It was 90% of his divine power. Although he had such a vast amount of divine power, he had still depleted 90% of it in one go to block the coldness. However, if it were someone else, for example, for the 4 Sir Gods who were killed by the coldness of the ancient flood dragon, their divine power would be less than 1/100th of Jian Wushuang's divine power. Hence, they would absolutely be unable to block the corrosion from the coldness. If it were an emperor god, he would be unable to block it as well. Only Jian Wushuang could block it with his vast amount of divine power. Even though that was the case, under the corrosion of the coldness, his internal organs had sustained great damage like never before. In addition, his body and mind were totally exhausted. He then spit out a big mouthful of blood. His aura had become extremely weak, and it was at rock bottom. He's actually not dead. The black-armored shadow could not help but be surprised. As for the ancient flood dragon under him, it gave a roar and it seemed to be furious. The 1-star man heaved a sigh of relief and said loudly, "Little kid, this battlefield is not a place that you can stay at. Let me send you out of here. First, don't resist." After speaking, a big hand from the giant shadow of the 1-star man was swung out, and it headed toward Jian Wushuang straight away. Jian Wushuang naturally did not resist. Even if he wanted to resist, he did not have the ability to do so. In no time, he was grabbed by the 1-star man's big hand. After that, go! The 1-star man gave a cry, and his big hand exerted a great amount of strength as though he was throwing a lance, and he threw Jian Wushuang out. A frightening amount of strength burst forth. Jian Wushuang then swept past the void and created a ray of light in his path. In a split second, he had disappeared from the battlefield. Upon seeing that, the black-armored shadow could not help but be extremely furious. "Old man, today I shall have a proper fight with you. A furious voice could be heard from the black-armored shadow. Haha, we are both shadows substantiated by consciousness, and we are also under many restrictions. Who is afraid of whom? The one-star man was not fearful in the slightest. Two earth-shaking experts continued to have an intense battle in the Buddhist demon sea. In no time, the whole Buddhist demon sea was on the verge of collapsing. Whoosh! A flittering light flew by at an extremely frightening speed. The violent sound of him sweeping past the sky was accompanied by an infinite amount of strong winds. Hence, Jian Wushuang was unable to open his eyes at all. The speed was too fast. It was countless times faster than the speed that Jian Wushuang had escaped with when he had unleashed the secret skill of dragon blood with his full power. It should be known that his current speed was not unleashed by him. Instead, the speed came from the one-star man throwing him out. He even had no idea when he would stop. Thus, he could only resign himself to fate. Time passed by, and close to 7 minutes' time had passed. However, Jian Wushuang's body had still not come to a stop yet. At that time, he was already extremely far away from the battlefield from before. At the void at the edge of the Buddhist demon sea in the 6th lair, there were 3 shadows moving about slowly. This is the edge of the Buddhist demon sea. The Buddhist demon sea is a great forbidden area of the 6th lair. While it is all right for us to travel at the edge, we must absolutely not enter it, a hale and hearty gray-robed old man explained. I have heard of the Buddhist demon sea before as well. It is said that if a real god were to enter the Buddhist demon sea, he would definitely die. However, Sir God Qianlan, with your abilities, it should not be a problem for you to travel inside, the young man with slightly pale skin mocked. Haha, don't flatter me. I am certain of my own abilities. For the Buddhist demon core, if there is no need to, it is better to not go in randomly. The hale, gray-robed old man, who was Sir God Qianlan from the Soaring Heaven King Palace, laughed. As for the pale-skinned young man, he was real God Han Quan of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. As for the last person, he was another real god of the Soaring Heaven King Palace who was in the real god ranking list, and his name was Real God Ing Yun. 1 Sir God and 2 experts from the real god ranking list. With such a lineup in the 6th lair, as long as they did not look for trouble by going into a forbidden area like the Buddhist demon sea, they could probably go anywhere they wanted. Then, whoosh, all of a sudden, a sound of something sweeping in the sky could be heard. Moreover, the sound was getting louder and louder. Sir God Qianlan and the 2 other people looked at the source of the sound immediately. They then saw a flittering light being shot out from the Buddhist demon sea with a shocking speed by chance. The flittering light was moving at an extremely fast speed, and it swept past the void beside the 3 of them in an instant. This is Sir God Qianlan, and the 2 other people opened their eyes wide. What a fast speed! What is that flittering light from just now? Real God Han Quan said, dumbfounded. The speed of the flittering light was too fast. It was so fast that all of them, including Sir God Qianlan, did not manage to get a clear look at what exactly it was. With such a fast speed, and that it came from within the Buddhist demon sea, no matter what it is, we should follow it and take a look. Sir God Qianlan and the 2 other people started to move immediately. They followed the direction where the flittering light was shot to and headed over quickly. If the flittering light had maintained its frightening speed, with just the 3 of them, they would definitely be unable to catch up to it for their whole life. However, after the flittering light left the Buddhist demon sea, its speed began to decrease at once. In no time, the flittering light came to a complete stop at a piece of void. After the flittering light dissipated, a shadow appeared. This shadow was Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1748. Enemies on a narrow road. Jian Wushuang had just stopped moving, and he immediately groaned. Ugh. Then He spat a mouthful of blood. He had forcefully performed the second seal of 9-province seal, hacked the earth earlier, and it was overloading his body, so his divine body was damaged. Then, the ancient flood dragon attacked him with chilliness to the point where his organs turned bad, and his divine body was heavily injured. Then, he was thrown out by One-Star Man, although he did that to save him, and let him leave the battlefield. The power he had used was terrifying. During the process, his injury went from bad to worse. By then, he was in a miserable situation. Jian Wushuang resisted the sharp pain from his body as he looked around. After he looked around, his eyes dilated in shock. This is outside of Buddhist Demon Sea? Jian Wushuang found it unbelievable. One should know that the triangle island that had sunk and disappeared, which he was on, although it wasn't the inland sea of Buddhist Demon Sea, was quite deep in the open sea. With Jian Wushuang's travel speed, from the triangle island to the outside of Buddhist Demon Sea, he would at least require 1 to 2 years' time. But then it was just one throw. The power of one throw threw him out of the battlefield and out of Buddhist Demon's Sea directly. What kind of power was that? Which level of technique did he perform? One-Star Man. Jian Wushuang remembered the name clearly. He knew that the reason why he could escape by the skin of his teeth was because of the assistance from One-Star Man. Otherwise, he would have been eaten by the ancient flood dragon long ago. I wonder who the senior is. Judging from his looks, he seems to be related to 7-Star Black Sect, and the person that was fighting with him. He might be an enemy of 7-Star Black Sect, Jian Wushuang muttered. Regardless, this favor has been engraved in my mind. One-Star Man had saved him, and he had even given him an opportunity. The palm that he performed sealed in Jian Wushuang's brain. The palm would provide Jian Wushuang with immeasurable help. Jian Wushuang was still in deep thought, but suddenly there were 3 flowing lights traveling over from the void afar. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. When he saw the 3 figures clearly, there was a chilly gleam in his eyes. Among the 3 persons, Jian Wushuang knew 2 of them, Sir God Qianlan and Real God Han Quan, the 2 experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Both of them had had conflicts with him in the 8th lair in the past. Jian Wushuang had gained fame by stepping on the 2 experts' shoulders. Then, outside of Buddhist Demon Sea, both parties had crossed paths again. Enemies on a narrow road. Jian Wushuang looked cold. The 3 figures hailed and looked at Jian Wushuang, who was floating quietly in the air. Sir God Qianlan and Real God Han Quan quivered at the sight. Jian Wushuang. Sir God Qianlan clenched his fists. It's him. Real God Han Quan revealed a terrified expression. In the battle in the 8th lair back then, Jian Wushuang had injured Sir God Qianlan badly and captured Real God Han Quan. In the end, Soaring Heaven King Palace had paid a great price in exchange for him. Sir God Qianlan was angry with Jian Wushuang, while Real God Han Quan was fearful of him. Although Real God Han Quan was also a real god, and an expert in the first few places on Real God ranking list, he had no courage to fight Jian Wushuang. The flowing light that burst out from Buddhist Demon Sea earlier, could it be him? Sir God Qianlan muttered. Sir God Qianlan, let's go, Real God Han Quan said, fearfully. Sir God Qianlan nodded faintly. He had fought with Jian Wushuang before, and he had suffered a great loss. If there wasn't any reason, he naturally didn't intend to fight with Jian Wushuang again. But just as the 2 of them turned to leave, hold on, Real God Yun at the side, who had never spoken earlier, called them, Sir God Qianlan, Real God Han Quan, didn't the 2 of you realize that Jian Wushuang's aura seems to be very weak? Real God Yun said, weak aura? Sir God Qianlan and Real God Han Quan looked at Jian Wushuang carefully. The 2 of them looked, and they were surprised. It was true. Jian Wushuang, then his aura was weak. To be exact, his aura was extremely weak. They could even feel that Jian Wushuang's aura might possibly vanish any time. What happened? Sir God Qianlan creased his eyebrows. He just came out of Buddhist Demon Sea. Did he run into any danger in Buddhist Demon Sea and get severely injured? Very likely. Real God Inyan nodded and smiled. When he came out of Buddhist Demon Sea earlier, he didn't fly out on his own, but in an uncontrollable condition. It was as though he was thrown out. If I'm not mistaken, he definitely ran into some kind of trouble in Buddhist Demon Sea and got severely injured. As for his power, it definitely decreased tremendously. Sir God Qianlan, this is a chance hard to come by for us. Sir God Qianlan's face grew cold when he heard that. The feud between Jian Wushuang and Soaring Heaven King Palace was deep-rooted. Jian Wushuang had made Soaring Heaven King Palace suffer a great loss, and they had even become a laughing stock once. Such deep-seated grudge, Soaring Heaven King Palace naturally wasn't willing to let it slip, but because Jian Wushuang was extremely powerful, and he had Lineage of Star as his backer, it wasn't easy to kill him. But then, they were in the 6th layer. There was no one from Lineage of Star who could come to the rescue, and Jian Wushuang was severely injured. This chance was truly hard to come by. Such a great opportunity. We shouldn't miss it. Sir God Qianlan clasped his hands together, and there was light shimmering in his eyes. Han Quan, Ingyun, the two of you retreat to a place far away. Don't let Jian Wushuang get any chance to catch the two of you. Yes, Real God Han Quan and Real God Ingyun nodded. With the previous lesson of Real God Han Quan's experience, the two real gods naturally retreated to somewhere far away as they were going to launch an attack. As the two real gods retreated, Sir God Qianlan walked towards Jian Wushuang slowly. Jian Wushuang, how do you do? Sir God Qianlan flashed a malicious smile. I see. It's Sir God Qianlan from Soaring Heaven King Palace. We just fought not too long ago. I never thought we were going to see each other so soon. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, and he looked like he couldn't be bothered. Why? Your previous injury recovered so quickly? Humph. Sir God Qianlan humped coldly. He had been severely injured by Jian Wushuang as he had been careless, and it had established Jian Wushuang's name. To him, it was a humiliation. I was careless last time. As we have met again today, I'd like to regain my name. Sir God Qianlan's voice was bright and clear. He flipped his wrist, and a red rod appeared in his hand while a fierce aura soared from Sir God Qianlan's body. Want to fight? Jian Wushuang smirked and waved his hand. Then, 2 rays of golden light suddenly lit up. Chapter 1749, Endless Trouble in the Future. Whoosh. Whoosh. 2 rays of brilliant golden light stopped beside Jian Wushuang, and they were the 2 Hongjun golden swords. The 2 Hongjun golden swords were emitting an infinite amount of cold light, and it looked as if they could attack any time. If you wish to fight with me, you had better be prepared to die. Jian Wushuang was filled with a great amount of murderous intent. Upon seeing the 2 Hongjun golden swords, the corners of Sir God Qianlan's mouth became distorted. Back then, in the 8th layer, Jian Wushuang had used 1 Hongjun golden sword to suppress him. At present, there were 2 of them. This Jian Wushuang, could it be that he was not injured at all? Sir God Qianlan started to hesitate. However, his expression changed abruptly. No, that's wrong. If he was not injured, he would definitely not say any unnecessary things to me. Instead, he would control the 2 Hongjun swords to kill me right away. Even though he did not do it straight away, he still took out the 2 golden swords. Hence, is he making an empty show of strength in order to intimidate me? After Sir God Lon thought to himself, and understood what was going on. An enormous amount of flames of fury appeared in his eyes. He was almost intimidated by Jian Wushuang, for real. "Little kid, die!" Sir God Qianlan gave a furious roar, and the crimson rod in his hand swept past the area abruptly. Countless crimson waves appeared in the void at once. They then swept past the area and gathered to form a gigantic crimson rod shadow that was hundreds of feet wide instantly. The crimson-red shadow was extremely huge, and it attacked Jian Wushuang immediately. Oh no! Jian Wushuang's expression changed at once. Sir God Qianlan's guess was right. He was indeed making an empty show of strength, and his objective was to get the people in front of him to retreat in the face of difficulty. As for fighting for real, his injuries were really too serious, and he probably could not even unleash 10% of his abilities. Moreover, his divine power was almost completely depleted as well. In such a state, even a chaotic real god could serve as a threat to him, let alone Sir God Qianlan. Seeing the crimson rod shadow was heading toward him, Jian Wushuang used his full power at once and controlled one Hongjun golden sword to attack. The Hongjun golden sword unleashed an impressive amount of power and clashed with the rod shadow head-on with lightning speed. Bam! With a loud sound, the Hongjun golden sword moved at an even faster speed. As for Jian Wushuang, his body shook vigorously, and he spit out 3 mouthfuls of blood in succession. His aura, which was already extremely weak to begin with, fell to rock bottom at that moment. "Ha ha, Jian Wushuang, you are really making an empty show of strength." Upon seeing that, Sir God Qianlan laughed loudly, and his eyes became filled with a vast amount of murderous intent. Damn it! Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth tightly. In the Buddhist Demon Sea, he had experienced 4 waves of attacks from the Acheron Palace successively, and he even fought a fight to the death with Emperor God Shuigu. Later on, he was attacked by the ancient flood dragon, and finally, he had escaped by the skin of his teeth. However, he totally did not expect himself to actually encounter the experts of the soaring Heaven King Palace next. Sir God Qianlan was merely a normal Sir God. If Jian Wushuang were at his peak, he could kill him easily. However, at present, a man who had lost his position and influence was subjected to indignity. The assassination by the Acheron Palace, as well as the flood dragon, have been unable to kill me. Hence, how can I die in the hands of the soaring Heaven King Palace? Jian Wushuang roared within his heart, and the remaining divine power in his body emerged again. Jian Wushuang, stop acting tough. Leave Sir God Qianlan to me, and run away quickly. A deep voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind abruptly. At the same time, the skin on Jian Wushuang's body also started to wriggle madly. King of venomous worms. Jian Wushuang's heart became disturbed. Sir God Qianlan is a Sir God expert. Can you take care of him by yourself? With my current abilities, although I am not an opponent for Sir God Qianlan, I can still keep him busy for a period of time. During this period of time, you must run as far away as possible. As for me, there's no need for you to worry. The life force of a full-foot plenilune is so strong that it is beyond your expectations. Hence, a mere Sir God will be unable to kill me. As soon as his words left his mouth, countless tentacles came out of Jian Wushuang's body. The king of venomous worms' huge body also appeared in the void again. Rustle! The countless tentacles were like flittering lights, and they headed towards Sir God Qianlan with lightning speed, stopping him in his tracks as a result. What the hell is this? Sir God Qianlan revealed a stunned expression. However, even more anger emerged from him. Piss off! Boom! With a loud sound, the huge crimson rod shadow destroyed hundreds of tentacles instantly. Some of its power also spread to the king of venomous worms' body, causing the king of venomous worms to groan. However, at the next moment, even more tentacles attacked madly. King of venomous worms, I shall leave this to you. Jian Wushuang looked at the king of venomous worms deeply, and his eyes glowed with a shrill light. Soaring Heaven King Palace, I, Jian Wushuang, shall remember the debt today. In the future, if I don't eliminate the Soaring Heaven King Palace, my name, Jian Wushuang, will be written in reverse order. Just wait and see. Jian Wushuang's ice-cold voice resounded across the universe. He had already made use of his remaining divine power to escape quickly. Seeing that Jian Wushuang was running away, Sir God Qianlan, as well as real God Han Quan and real God Ing Yun, who were both behind him, wanted to give chase. However, they were stopped by the king of venomous worms. Damn it! Where did this worm beast come from? Since you wish to die, I shall grant you your wish. Murderous intent sprang up in Sir God Qianlan. The power of his crimson rod then rose greatly, and many rod shadows attacked the king of venomous worms crazily. After undergoing a transformation, the king of venomous worms had awakened his close-quarters combat abilities. Moreover, it was a full-foot plenilune. Hence, it could just about serve as a threat to a normal almighty. However, after the successive great battles in the Buddhist Demon Sea, the king of venomous worms did not get off with light injuries either. At present, his abilities had not recovered to their peak. Furthermore, he was fighting with Sir God Qianlan alone. Therefore, he would definitely be in a huge disadvantage. However, as his body was enormous and that his life force was exuberant, he only started to escape after fighting with Sir God Qianlan for close to a quarter of an hour's time. Sir God Qianlan had also given chase for a long time. However, he still allowed the king of venomous worms to get away in the end. At a dark void in the 6th lair, Sir God Qianlan, real God Han Quan, and Sir God Ing Yun were gathered together. In addition, they had ugly expressions. We have actually missed this golden opportunity. Sir God Qianlan clenched both his fists tightly, and he was filled with dissatisfaction. It's all thanks to that worm beast from before. If not for it obstructing us, Jian Wushuang would definitely have died. Real God Han Quan snorted coldly. The worm beast from before was very frightening. Real God Ing Yun said with a low voice. It was very frightening. Moreover, it was not just frightening in terms of its close-quarters combat abilities. Most importantly, it had a frightening life force and ability to recover. With such a suppression by Sir God Qianlan, where he injured the worm beast continuously, he still had not managed to kill the worm beast. Instead, he could only look on as it escaped in the end. That worm beast merely has a powerful life force. However, this is not important. The most important thing is Jian Wushuang. Sir God Qianlan squinted his eyes. This time around, we attacked him when he was seriously injured. If we had managed to kill him, then there would be no problem. However, since he's not dead, the Soaring Heaven King Palace will have endless trouble in the future. Chapter 1750. Palace Master escorted in the dark void at the border of Buddhist Demon Sea. Jian Wushuang, who was fleeing, finally stopped on a dark ground. I can't continue to run anymore. Jian Wushuang looked around himself. It's because I am at the border of Buddhist Demon Sea. It would be difficult to run into any star demon. But if I were to continue to run forward, there's an 80% chance that I will run into one. Star demon. Star demons in the 6th lair. Besides the 4-horned star demons that were extremely rare and only lived in the dangerous place, almost nothing else could pose a threat to Jian Wushuang. However, it was when Jian Wushuang was at his zenith. To Jian Wushuang, then, even a crimson 3-horned star demon was vital. He didn't dare to move around in the sixth lair then. It was most crucial for him to quickly recover his situation. My injury is too serious, and my power has reached an all-time low. It will be impossible for me to recover in a short period of time. Plus, the sixth lair isn't a place to recover, Jian Wushuang muttered, and immediately took out a token to send a message to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, Palace Master, has already arrived in the sixth lair. I will send your location to him. He will be with you in no time. Besides, Hall Master Guexian has already escaped from Buddhist Demon Sea. Hall Master Yuan replied. Palace Master came. Jian Wushuang stunned. From what he knew, the Master of Star Palace had always been meditating in seclusion. Plus, the meditation then seemed to be extremely important. Hence, even when Jian Wushuang had become a hall master and threw a banquet, the Master of Star Palace never appeared. But then, Palace Master was already liberated from seclusion. The moment he found out that you were assassinated in Buddhist Demon Sea, he immediately rushed over. Hall Master Yuan said. I see. Jian Wushuang was touched. Jian Wushuang, just wait for a moment. Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang nodded and immediately sat down. He flipped his hand, and there were a bunch of elixirs in his hand. The elixirs were extremely precious. Even a Sir God would value them highly. However, Jian Wushuang ate all the elixirs as though he was eating beans. He took in more than 10 of them in one go. Then he continued to treat his injury as he waited. Very soon, a maroon figure got closer to Jian Wushuang. The maroon figure belonged to King of Venomous Worms. He was connected to Jian Wushuang by heart and blood. They could feel the existence of one another. Then, King of Venomous Worms immediately snuck into Jian Wushuang's body. King of Venomous Worms, are you okay? Jian Wushuang asked. I got injured, and I need some time to recover, but it's nothing major, King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang let out a breath of relief when he heard the news. The time flew past. Jian Wushuang waited for 10 days in silence. Then, the Master of Star Palace and Hall Master Guexian arrived. When Jian Wushuang saw the Master of Star Palace and Hall Master Guexian, he was finally at ease. Jian Wushuang, your injury, the Master of Star Palace squinted his eyes. He could feel that Jian Wushuang's aura was extremely weak. I am badly injured, but I am alive. Jian Wushuang smiled weakly. What happened in Buddhist Demon Sea? Where's Lei Chao? Hall Master Guexian asked. Let's talk about this when we return, Jian Wushuang said. The Master of Star Palace nodded faintly. Then, the 3 of them returned to Lineage of Star. Although Jian Wushuang was badly injured, he consumed some elixirs and recovered some divine power during the 10 days when he was waiting for the Master of Star Palace and Hall Master Guexian. He could afford to simply fly. With the Master of Star Palace escorting personally, the journey back was smooth. The 3 of them arrived in Lineage of Star very soon, in the lair of Lineage of Star, in a lofty palace. The Master of Star Palace was seated on the uppermost of the palace, while Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan, and Hall Master Guexian sat on their respective seats. As for Hall Master Nieyun, he remained in the 5th lair and never came out. In the lofty palace, then, it was dead silent. The 4 experts looked at the dead body in the middle of the hall, and their faces looked icy. The dead body was naturally Lei Chaos. Lei Chao, I killed him myself. Jian Wushuang's voice was deep, and there was pain in his eyes. The 3 of them heard him, but never intended to reprimand Jian Wushuang. I also know about soul control technique. Once a person is soul controlled, they don't stand a chance to shake it off. It basically means the person is dead. With you killing him, It is simply giving him a true relief. If I were you, I would have done the same, the Master of Star Palace said. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Gu Xian nodded solemnly. Lei Chao was an expert of lineage of star. Before Jian Wushuang rose up, he was the number one among real gods in lineage of star. They shared a great relationship. Lei Chao had died, and they were all in pain. However, if they were Jian Wushuang, they definitely would do that same as Jian Wushuang to give Lei Chao relief. Bury him. To outsiders, tell them that he ran into danger and accidentally fallen when he wandered in the sixth lair, the Master of Star Palace said. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded, and he waved to keep Lei Chaos body into Qian Kuan Ring. Everyone reigned in their agony, and the Master of Star Palace looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, tell us what happened in Buddhist Demon Sea, the Master of Star Palace said. MM. Jian Wushuang nodded, then he started telling the ins and outs of the story. He didn't hide anything about his experience in Buddhist Demon Sea. He talked about everything that he should, from the beginning when he had first arrived at the Triangle Island where Lei Chao was, to the first killer move he encountered, which was the assassination carried out by the ugly-looking lady. He also shared his judgment. When they heard of the first and second killer moves that Acheron Palace had prepared, the three of them still remained calm. However, the moment they found out about Acheron Palace's third move, Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Gu Xian stood on their feet. The 5 powerful Sir Gods teamed up and set up the killing formation of 9 cuts. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Gu Xin's eyes were wide. They knew about the killing formation of 9 cuts too, and it was set up by 5 Sir Gods. Under normal circumstances, anyone lower than an Emperor God stood almost no chance to stay alive. However, Jian Wushuang had forcefully dissolved the killing formation of 9 cuts and killed one of them. Such power. Even the top Sir God wouldn't be able to do that. After I broke the killing formation of 9 cuts and killed Lei Chao, I met another person. The person was the 4th killer move that Acheron Palace prepared for me. Jian Wushuang continued. He was in a crimson robe, and he was using a crimson trident. He was already in the realm of Emperor God. Emperor God? Then, even the Master of Star Palace looked shocked. An Emperor God using a crimson trident. It's Emperor God Shuegu. The Master of Star Palace pounded the table and stood up in anger. There was murderous intention in his eyes. As for Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Gu Xian, they were terrified, and they were also raging with anger. Chapter 1751. Seclusion Emperor God Shuegu was a famous and great expert in the eternal chaotic world. In the past, the Sanctuary Alliance had always thought that Emperor God Shuegu had a weird personality, and he was unwilling to be constrained by the Sanctuary Alliance. However, it was only at that moment that they knew that Emperor God Shuegu was actually someone from the Acheron Palace. As for the Acheron Palace, in order to get rid of Jian Wushuang, a real god, not only did they employ 5 Sir Gods to deploy the killing formation of 9 cuts, they also employed Emperor God Shuegu to take action personally. They were really ruthless. As for later on, Jian Wushuang also gave a simple explanation regarding what he experienced later on. Of course, he had merely talked about some of his own trump cards briefly. Upon hearing that Jian Wushuang had had an intense battle with Emperor God Shuegu, and that he also did his best to keep himself alive, Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Gu Xian could not help but admire him. When he reached the end where the ancient flood dragon appeared, swallowed Emperor God Shuegu, with one gulp, killed the 4 Sir Gods, and attracted 2 extremely powerful experts to fight a great battle in the Buddhist Demon Sea, Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xian, and even the Star Palace Master were stunned. That legend is actually real, the Star Palace Master murmured. That legend. Jian Wushuang could not help but look at the Star Palace Master. A long time ago, there was a rumor in the eternal chaotic world. It is said that when the ancient past and the first era crumbled, countless experts died during the Great Battle. However, at the same time, there was a portion of experts who did not die in the Great Battle. Instead, they entered a state of eternal deep sleep. As for the places that they are in deep sleep in, some of them are in the forbidden areas of the First Era's battlefield, while some of them are in the ancient battlefield. These experts who are in deep sleep possessed exceptionally powerful techniques, and even great emperors are afraid of them. For example, the boundless purgatory in the second lair, which is known for its mighty name, is said to be a place of deep sleep of an extremely powerful expert. The Star Palace Master said earnestly, "Boundless purgatory." Hall Master Guzin's throat could not remain calm. Going to the second lair was the same as going to one's death if he were to travel there without the fighting capabilities of an emperor god. For the boundless purgatory, Hall Master Gu Xian had only heard of it before. As for Jian Wushuang, he could remain calm. After all, back then in the eighth lair, he had also come across an expert who was in deep sleep. He knew very well that the eternal chaotic world was not as simple as it looked on the surface. Jian Wushuang, according to what you have said, it seems like there are two experts in deep sleep in the Buddhist Demon Sea. However, due to the clash between you and the Acheron Palace, those two experts were awakened by chance, and this resulted in the great battle which occurred later on, the Star Palace Master said. Among the two experts, one of them said that I am definitely connected to a sect known as the Seven-Star Black Sect. Thus, he took action and saved my life by sending me out of the Buddhist Demon Sea. Jian Wushuang said, Seven-Star Black Sect. Hall Master Gu Xian was stunned, as she had never heard of such a sect before. I know about the Seven-Star Black Sect. The Star Palace Master opened his mouth and said, the Seven-Star Black Sect is a powerful sect back in the ancient past. However, as the ancient past collapsed, this sect naturally disappeared along with their long history. As for him saying that you are related to the Seven-Star Black Sect, it is considered normal, because the secret skill of Star Palace that you have cultivated have come from the Seven-Star Black Sect. As I was fortunate, I happened to chance upon this secret skill's inheritance. What? Hall Master Gu Xian was stunned. However, she understood immediately. The secret skill of Star Palace was frightening, extremely frightening. Due to the existence of the secret skill of Star Palace in the lineage of Star, many powerhouses were afraid of the lineage of Star. As for such a kind of secret skill, under normal circumstances, even great emperor-level experts would be unable to create it. Thus, Hall Master Gu Xian had suspected whether this secret skill was created by the Star Palace Master a long time ago. However, the Star Palace Master had never spoken about it before. At present, the Star Palace Master had taken the initiative to admit it. This is what has happened. After listening to Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xian, and the Star Palace Master gasped. They knew very clearly how dangerous Jian Wushuang's experience this time around was. At the same time, they had become even more fearful of the Acheron Palace. Jian Wushuang, for you to be able to escape by the skin of your teeth this time around, apart from the fact that it was due to your powerful abilities, it was also partially due to luck. As such, you must absolutely be careful in the future, the Star Palace Master warned. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head earnestly. One would only learn from their own mistakes. With the narrow escape this time around, Jian Wushuang had a better understanding of the Acheron Palace, and he revered the world even more. Thus, he would naturally be more careful in doing things in the future. After all, he absolutely did not want to experience the same thing twice. All right, Since your injuries are very serious, you had better go back and recuperate first, the Star Palace master said. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. As his injuries were very serious, he would be unable to recover in a short amount of time. Hence, he had already made up his mind to stay in the lineage of Star for a while, to seclude himself in recovery. In a secret room that was covered heavily by seals and the sword Star, Jian Wushuang was sitting down with his legs crossed. Jian Wushuang, this time around, you survived the assassination that was planned carefully by the Acheron Palace. Moreover, you caused the Acheron Palace to suffer great losses. If this piece of news were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar in the eternal chaotic world, and your reputation will improve greatly, the king of venomous worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. I was just lucky, Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently, and he was not arrogant in the slightest. He knew very clearly that luck had made up a huge portion of the reason why he was able to stay alive. Looking at the methods that the Acheron Palace had employed, even Jian Wushuang himself could not help but gasp in admiration. The Acheron Palace would not take action easily. However, when they took action, it was indeed extraordinary, and it forced Jian Wushuang into a hopeless situation right away. If not for him being fortunate and coming across the expert deep inside the Buddhist demon sea, he would definitely be dead. Forget about the Acheron Palace. However, after that, I was hunted down by Sir God Qianlong of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. That is the true humiliation. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly, and a vast amount of murderous intent emerged in his eyes. The Acheron Palace had hatched a detailed plan to kill him, and the methods that they had employed had caused even Jian Wushuang to exclaim in admiration. Even if he were killed by them, he would not feel any grievances. But what about the Soaring Heaven King Palace? They had attacked him when he was seriously injured. This caused Jian Wushuang to be even more furious. If not for the king of venomous worms taking action and stopping Sir God Qianlong, he would have probably died at the hands of Sir God Qianlong. That was a true oppression, and he would have died an unworthy death. Soaring Heaven King Palace. Jian Wushuang was overflowing with murderous intent. There's no rush. When my abilities recover completely, I shall take my time to play with them. However, Jian Wushuang also knew that his injuries this time around were too serious. Hence, it would be impossible for him to recover his abilities completely in a short amount of time. Moreover, if it were only injuries in his body, it would be all right. However, the most important thing was that he had paid a huge price to fight a fight to the death this time around. In particular, all his 6 ancient god stars were destroyed. His ancient god's cultivation base had fallen to rock bottom, and the process for him to recover would not be easy. I shall do it slowly. During this period of time, where I have secluded myself in recuperation to recover my abilities, I can also absorb all the demon cores that I obtained back then and go for stage 3 ultimate real god. In addition, there is also the palm that the 1-star man left behind in my head. That is also a great opportunity. Chapter 1752, Removal. In terms of ultimate divine power, after Jian Wushuang had consumed 9 Tai Ching ancient panaceas, the ultimate divine power in him was already extremely close to completion. There was only a very small part of divine power left. From Jian Wushuang's viewpoint, he only needed to absorb all the demon cores that he got from Soaring Heaven King Palace, and it should be sufficient. By then, when his divine power had reached completion, he would be able to achieve the 3rd stage of ultimate real God, and his power would increase tremendously. Then, he needed to rest in seclusion to recover from his injury. Besides, he needed to precipitate the 6 ancient god stars again, which would definitely require an extremely long time. During the process, he could absorb the demon cores to increase his divine power. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang let out a breath and started to meditate. Just as Jian Wushuang was resting in seclusion in an extremely far-away territory on a large dark land, a cold, dark palace towered. In the palace, a man in a black robe knelt politely. There were many statue-like soldiers in black armor that gave out cold auras around themselves. Jian Wushuang has already returned to Lineage of Star. An ancient yet hoarse voice suddenly rang in the palace, and the voice sounded like it was coming from all directions. Yes, someone saw that he entered Lineage of Star with the Master of Star Palace, with the Master of Star Palace escorting him personally. The man in a black robe said politely, "Humph." A cold humph suddenly spread. Roar, roar, roar. The soldiers in black armor in the palace let out angry roars simultaneously, and their voices shook the earth. Such a meticulous plan that was said to be well conceived didn't kill Jian Wushuang? What do I need all of you for? The hoarse voice spread with boundless pressure. The man in a black robe, who knelt down, couldn't help but shiver. How about Shuegu? Emoing? Where are the few of them? A hoarse voice asked. Master, besides when Jian Wushuang first fell into the trap and Emperor God Shuegu sent a message, there was no other news from them. I continuously tried to get into contact with them, but there was no reply until now. The man in black robe replied. The lofty palace was suddenly in silence. Although Buddhist Demon Sea was dangerous, time and space wasn't sealed off. Hence, they could still communicate with one another. But then, Jian Wushuang had already returned to Lineage of Star, and the people from Acheron Palace didn't reply. There was only one possibility. Dead. Shuegu, Emoing, and the men that we've sent out have all died. The hoarse voice continued to speak, but there wasn't anger like before. Who is it? Who could kill them? Jian Wushuang? Impossible. No matter how ridiculously strong Jian Wushuang is, he is only a real god. His power is at most comparable to real God Wu Bai's, the 5 Sir Gods from Acheron Palace, and even Emperor God Shuegu himself. Jian Wushuang didn't even stand much hope to stay alive, let alone killing Shuegu, Emoing, and the others. He definitely does not have the capability. If it wasn't him, who would it be? The Master of Star Palace? The owner of the hoarse voice reckoned that only the Master of Star Palace in Lineage of Star had the power to kill Emperor God Shuegu and the 5 other Sir Gods. Master, according to our information, the Master of Star Palace had been meditating in seclusion. Before Jian Wushuang was assassinated, he never left to the 6th lair. It was impossible that he could reach it in time to save Jian Wushuang. The man in a black robe who knelt down replied politely, if it wasn't the Master of Star Palace, who would it be? Would it be any experts of Sanctuary Alliance who happen to be wandering in Buddhist Demon Sea? No way. I roughly know the locations of the top experts of Sanctuary Alliance. There wasn't anyone in the 6th lair. If it wasn't the experts of Sanctuary Alliance, the thing that caused their deaths would only be the natural danger in Buddhist Demon Sea, or maybe some ancient existence in the depth of Buddhist Demon Sea got involved. But why would the ancient existence suddenly be awakened? The owner of the hoarse voice muttered. Then he let out a sigh after a long while. Forget it. As the mission has failed, it is useless to look into it. Send down my command. Remove Jian Wushuang from the must-kill name list. Remove Jian Wushuang from the must-kill name list. The man in a black robe who knelt was stunned. Master, will we not assassinate him in the future? 5 Sir Gods teamed up and set up the killing formation of 9 cuts plus an Emperor God who was extremely close to the top, who performed and carried out a meticulously planned assassination. In the end, they hadn't killed him, but the whole army was wiped out. Regardless of the reason, it proved Jian Wushuang's power. If we were to want to kill him again, we will have to at least send out the top of the top who is comparable to the master of Star Palace or even an emperor god stronger than him. And even so, it will not be definite. After all, there was an assassination. Jian Wushuang will definitely be more cautious. To be able to kill him, there is only one way, which is for the great emperor himself to kill him personally. However, there are only 2 experts who are great emperor level in Akron Palace, and their identities are extremely unique. They definitely want to take action to assassinate a genius of Sanctuary Alliance. In other words, we, Akron Palace, have already missed the best timing to kill Jian Wushuang. In the future, unless there is to be a fight against Sanctuary Alliance or a good opportunity, we shouldn't try to assassinate him. The hoarse voice reverberated in the lofty palace. It didn't go away for a very long time. Leave. Yes. The man in the black robe immediately left. In the lofty palace, the remaining cold soldiers in black armor continued to stand there like statues. But suddenly, there was a creepy shadow that appeared on the uppermost throne from nowhere. The person was in a white robe, and his face was blurry. Jian Wushuang. A faint voice was heard from the blurry shadow in a white robe. You are extremely talented, far more talented than real God Wu Bei. You could totally become an almighty in the future and stand shoulder to shoulder with a great emperor. You might even stand a chance to reach the level of the strongest person in Sanctuary Alliance. If it was like before, we of Akron Palace would definitely kill a top genius like you, regardless of the price we would have to pay. But now we can't. You should be glad that you were born in a great period. We of Akron Palace have something more important to be done at this period. We have no time, nor money, nor energy to spare to take care of you. However, the period will pass. In no time, the period will pass. In 100,000 years, at most. Jian Wushuang, you have 100,000 years to grow. 100,000 years later, we of Akron Palace will go all out. By then, even if you become great emperor, you'll die without a doubt. Ha ha ha. The blurry shadow in a white robe let out a burst of strange laughter. It didn't go away for a very long time in the lofty palace. Chapter 1753, the 7th level. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had already been in seclusion for 500 years. In a secret room in the Sword Star. King of Venomous Worms, your speed of recovery is really slow. Even though it has already been 500 years, you have still not precipitated a single ancient god star. Jian Wushuang complained. It will be soon. At most, it will take another 100 years for the first ancient god star to be restored. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. Jian Wushuang, you should be content with your current situation. Do you think that it is so easy to restore the ancient god stars? Fortunately, I have already transformed into a full-foot plenilune, and my speed of recovery is many times faster than before. If not, under normal circumstances, when all 6 ancient god stars of a 6-star royal ancient god are destroyed, even with a plenilune helping you to recover with its full power, it would at least take tens of thousands of years for you to recover to your peak. Tens of thousands of years. Jian Wushuang clicked his tongue in admiration. He had heard from the King of Venomous Worms a long time ago that the cost of using the star destruction skill was extremely high for ancient gods. If not for them giving their all, the ancient gods would absolutely not use it easily. Moreover, even if they were to use it under normal circumstances, they would only destroy 1 or 2 stars. Only lunatics would destroy 6 stars in one go. It was only because of the fact that Jian Wushuang was forced into a situation where he had no choice but to destroy 6 stars in one go. King of Venomous Worms, with your speed, how long will it take to restore all 6 stars? Jian Wushuang could not help but ask. It will not take long. It will probably take about 7 to 8,000 years of time for me to restore them. Jian Wushuang, do you think that you have the right to complain? These 6 stars do not require you to precipitate them slowly. Instead, it is purely dependent on me working desperately hard to restore them. Even with this, are you still not satisfied? The king of venomous worms said with dissatisfaction. Jian Wushuang could not help but laugh. Pleniluns were born together with an ancient god. To ancient gods, pleniluns were extremely important. They did not merely help in terms of recovering divine power and injuries. Moreover, even the destroyed ancient god stars were dependent on the pleniluns to restore them. If the ancient gods were to rely on themselves to restore the ancient god stars, it would not be as simple as tens of thousands of years. Instead, it might even take hundreds of thousands of years. As for the 500 years that Jian Wushuang had been in seclusion, it was the king of venomous worms who had done his best to help him restore the destroyed ancient god star. As for Jian Wushuang, he had placed most of his attention in that one shocking palm in his head. That palm was the opportunity that the super expert one-star man had bestowed upon him in the Buddhist Demon Sea, extermination palm of reincarnation. This palm contained an infinite amount of reincarnation power. To Jian Wushuang, this palm was so profound that it was impressive. During the past 500 years, he had been doing his utmost best to comprehend the palm. However, he had only managed to scratch its surface. However, even though he had only scratched the surface, he was still over the moon. Extermination palm of reincarnation. This palm seemed to contain the whole reincarnation doctrine, Jian Wushuang murmured. He then closed his eyes again, and the shocking palm appeared in his head again. Jian Wushuang also continued to comprehend. As he comprehended, he absorbed the pure power that the demon cores contained at the same time. Hence, he lost no time in doing both things at the same time. After all, it was very easy to absorb the demon cores as he only needed to leave a small bit of his consciousness outside. Time passed by slowly. In a flash, another 1,500 years passed. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang had closed his eyes, and he was sitting down with his legs crossed. However, from his right palm, a vast amount of reincarnation power had emerged. Jian Wushuang's level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had already achieved the top of the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace. Hence, he could control a great amount of reincarnation power. At that moment, Jian Wushuang swung his right hand, which contained a vast amount of reincarnation power, toward the void in front of him. He had unleashed this movement according to the way of using the shocking palm in his head. After comprehending with great effort for 2,000 years, although he was unable to fully comprehend the real secrets within the palm, he could already just about use the move itself. Every time that he swung his palm, Jian Wushuang did not use his divine power. Many palm prints that contained reincarnation power were unleashed, and it would shake the void every time it was unleashed. Jian Wushuang was practicing repeatedly. During this period of time, it was unknown how many times he had repeated the same movement. However, all of a sudden, buzz, a palm print materialized completely at the void in front of Jian Wushuang, and it was sent out with a great amount of power. Rustle, although it did not contain any divine power, the palm still created many ripples in the void, and it almost broke open the void completely. Jian Wushuang's eyes, which had been closed tightly, finally opened, and a delighted expression emerged from his eyes. There's finally something. Jian Wushuang was over the moon. Over the past 2,000 years, he had been studying and comprehending the shocking palm in his head intensively. All he wanted to do was to grasp how to use the palm for real. However, After practicing many times and studying intensively for a long period of time, he was still unable to bring forth the hidden secrets in the palm in the end. Hence, he was totally unable to do it the same way as the palm, where he would combine a great amount of reincarnation power perfectly and unleash a frightening amount of power. Against that, Jian Wushuang could not do anything. He knew that it was almost impossible for him to learn how to use the palm. At the very least, it was impossible for him at that moment. Hence, he could only mimic it. He would mimic the palm to the best of his abilities. He would mimic the way it was used, and also mimic some special secrets that the palm contained. After studying intensively for hundreds of years and practicing for countless times, he had finally managed to imitate it with some difficulty. As soon as he imitated it successfully, Jian Wushuang realized that the conditions were ripe and his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine achieved a whole new level. Putting it another way, he had opened up a new door, the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. He could feel that the amount of reincarnation power that he could control had risen like never before. Such a kind of improvement was a transformation in terms of quality, and it was completely different from before. For him to have such a change meant that his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had made a breakthrough. He had reached the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace from his original level of being at the top of the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace. Although it seemed to be only one step between these two levels, the gap between them was like heaven and earth. It must be known that even if one were extremely talented in comprehension, the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace was still at the level of a real God. As for the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace, it was the level of an almighty. My comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine and space-time doctrine have both achieved the top of the 6th level already. Moreover, I am more proficient in comprehending the space-time doctrine. Hence, I originally thought that even if I were to make a breakthrough in the future, my space-time doctrine would definitely be the first one to make a breakthrough. However, I did not expect my reincarnation doctrine to actually make a breakthrough first. Jian Wushuang laughed. Since his reincarnation doctrine had made a breakthrough to achieve the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace, his abilities would skyrocket. At the very least, his attack power would achieve a new level. However, if his space-time doctrine were to make a breakthrough, it would probably influence his abilities to a greater extent. No matter what, it's a good thing for me to have made a breakthrough. Moreover, I have barely managed to mimic that palm. Let me have a try. Jian Wushuang was excited, and he raised his palm again. This time around, his palm did not only contain a vast amount of reincarnation power. Instead, it also contained a small bit of divine power. In a split second, he swung his palm. Chapter 1754. The third stage of ultimate real God Hong. Then, the void before Jian Wushuang shattered like a piece of paper. He felt the power contained in his palm, and Jian Wushuang revealed a smile. I reckon that my palm could only give play to 1/100th of a one-star man, or maybe even 1/10,000th of his power. Even so, it is extremely powerful. Jian Wushuang was shocked. The degree of the scariness of the palm that the one-star man had left in his head was far beyond Jian Wushuang's imagination. Even if it was only 1/100th or 1/10,000th of the power, it was still considered an extremely powerful, unique skill. My palm is also driven by the power of reincarnation. Its name will be Reincarnation Palm. Then Jian Wushuang muttered. Just then, Jian Wushuang was stunned. This feeling, there was excitement in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Ha! In these 2,000 years, although I only absorbed some demon cores occasionally, the accumulated divine power is extremely vast. Now, I can finally precipitate the 100th drop of ultimate divine power droplet. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, and he could feel the changes in his body. In the ocean of divine power, there were originally 99 drops of ultimate divine power droplet floated there. But then an enormous amount of divine power billowed, and it started to precipitate the 100th drop of ultimate divine power droplet. The speed of precipitation was shocking. Jian Wushuang didn't need to do anything. Everything happened naturally. In a short while, the 100th ultimate divine power droplet was finally completed. It succeeded. Jian Wushuang was filled with excitement. The 100th ultimate divine power droplet marked the completion of divine power. Jian Wushuang had reached the limit of real God stage. The moment it was precipitated, Jian Wushuang immediately felt his divine power and divine body start to transform at a shocking speed. Such a transformation was much bigger compared to the transformation when he had leveled up to the second stage from the first stage of ultimate real God. His divine power was increasing madly in strength and quality. For instance, if Jian Wushuang's divine power strength before could merely shatter a 10,000 gene rock, he could easily break a tens of thousands of gene rock as his divine power grew stronger. A tens of thousands of gene rock, and his power continued to grow at a shocking speed. The same applied to his divine body. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and fully focused on the transformation of his divine power and divine body. The time flew past, and half a day passed. Jian Wushuang's transformation finally slowed down. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes shot open, and there was a burst of light. I'm finally at the third stage of ultimate real God. Jian Wushuang clenched his hand, and there was suddenly an explosive strength that burst out. In Jian Wushuang's perception, the terrifying explosion of divine power was at least 100 times stronger. One should know that his previous divine power explosion was already at Sir God level. This breakthrough brings about a drastic change in me, Jian Wushuang muttered. At the second stage of ultimate real God, divine power and divine body could be compared to an ordinary Sir God's. Once he reached the third stage of ultimate real God, his divine power and divine body was at the level of Emperor God. Sir God and Emperor God both were almighties. It looked like it was just a different realm, but in actual fact, the difference was vast. When he was in Buddhist Demon Sea, Jian Wushuang had dealt with 5 Sir Gods, and they had even set up the killing formation of 9 cuts. But he had relied on his trump cards to break the killing formation of 9 cuts and killed one of them. After he met Emperor God Shui Gu, however, Emperor God Shui Gu alone had made Jian Wushuang go all out. He stopped at nothing. He had even performed the secret skill of Star Palace, but he couldn't match him evenly. That was the difference between Emperor God and Sir God. The difference was first displayed in divine power and divine body. The divine power and divine body of an Emperor God was 100 times stronger than an ordinary Sir God's. Secondly, an Emperor God's comprehension towards power of heaven way definitely already reached the standard of the 8th level of Doctrine Palace. Sir God was merely on the 7th. The difference in the aspect was shockingly huge too. It led to the power of Emperor God that could suppress a Sir God like breaking a piece of dead wood. As for the difference between an Emperor God and a great emperor, it was even more ridiculous. Then, Jian Wushuang had reached the third stage of ultimate real God. At least in terms of divine power and divine body, he was already even-handed with an Emperor God. Merely relying on such ferocious divine power, he could wipe out all Sir Gods, theoretically. Back then, real God Wu Bei was considered extremely strong among Sir God because he had reached the third stage of ultimate real God. It's a pity that his comprehension towards Heaven Way was too low, Jian Wushuang said. Real God Wu Bei knew that his comprehension towards Heaven Wei wasn't high. He had only comprehended one power of Heaven Wei, and he had barely reached the standard of the 6th level in Doctrine Palace. He was very far away from the peak of the 6th level. Many real gods on Real God ranking list had a higher level of comprehension towards power of Heaven Wei than him. Hence, even though he had fierce divine power and a divine body, Real God Wu Bei could only suppress an ordinary Sir God. If he were to run into any top Sir Gods, he might not be the Sir God's match. However, Jian Wushuang was totally different. His comprehension of Heaven Wei was far higher than Real God Wu Bai's. His comprehension of reincarnation doctrine itself already reached the 7th level in Doctrine Palace, which was on par with an almighty. Besides, he had many tricks and secret skills that Real God Wu Bei couldn't compare to favorably. Forget about the others. Merely the fact that he possessed the 4 Ancient God unique skill and 3 Ancient God secret skill was already sufficient for him to let out his fighting power flawlessly. With that, he was confident to wipe out any Sir Gods. In addition to that, there was the Hongjun Golden Sword, Mountain River Map, secret skill of Star Palace, and other trump cards. Jian Wushuang was confident to fight a battle with an ordinary Emperor God. Even if he were to run into experts like Emperor God Shui Gu, he could match evenly even if he didn't go all out. My power has increased too greatly, Jian Wushuang smiled, but he quickly calmed down. I reached the 3rd stage of Ultimate Real God, which is the peak of Ultimate Real God. Next, it will be the 7th step of inverse cultivation and to become an almighty. However, I haven't gotten the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill yet. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Inverse cultivation skills were very rarely seen. The first 5 steps were easy, but from the 6 steps onwards, it wasn't easily obtainable by any ordinary people. Jian Wushuang was lucky that he had run into the birth of Real God Wu Bai's cave dwelling, and he had obtained the 6th step of inverse cultivation skill from him. As a result, he had reached the 3rd stage of Ultimate Real God. However, the 7th step after the 6th, the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, even Real God Wu Bei didn't get it back then. If Jian Wushuang wanted to become an almighty, he had to first obtain the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. Chapter 1755. Come out of seclusion. I remember that back then, Real God Wu Bei has said before that he knew where the training method for the 7th step of an inverse cultivator was. However, it's a pity that that person is very reserved and old. Hence, Real God Wu Bei did not even have a chance to interact with him. Jian Wushuang said, "For such a reserved expert, he must be someone who can shake the world, and the palace master should know about him. After coming out of seclusion, I will have to go and ask him." After thinking about that, Jian Wushuang calmed his mind down completely. After that, he continued to comprehend the shocking palm in his head. There is a unique method to use this palm, and it includes a method to use the reincarnation power as well. Although it's a palm skill, it can only be applied to sword principles. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes. No matter what shocking moves he possessed, he would never forget that he was a person who studied the sword. Sword principles were his root. For example, learning how to use the reincarnation palm by mimicking and studying the shocking palm was only for the sake of paving a way for him to study his sword principles. It was only by studying the palm in his head thoroughly that he could slowly develop it and create a sword principle that belonged to him. Jian Wushuang continued to comprehend, and the king of venomous worms also continued to restore his ancient god stars. It was extremely difficult to restore the ancient god stars, especially if all 6 stars were destroyed. Even with a full-foot plenilune, like the king of venomous worms helping him to restore the ancient god stars with its full power, it would still require a very long time. Jian Wushuang had been prepared for it for a long time. Time passed by quickly. In a flash, Jian Wushuang had been in seclusion for a total of 7,800 years. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang was still sitting down with his legs crossed. In the space between his eyebrows, there were originally 5 ancient god stars. At present, the 6th dark golden ancient god star had started to precipitate slowly, and such a kind of precipitation carried on for more than half a month before the ancient god star had completely precipitated out. It's finally done. The king of venomous worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head, and its voice was filled with fatigue. King of venomous worms, thank you very much, Jian Wushuang said gratefully. He was grateful from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, he was also glad that he had a battle companion like the king of venomous worms who could fight side by side with him. Over the time the king of venomous worms lived inside his body, the king of venomous worms had given him a lot of help. Even though he already possessed the fighting capabilities of an almighty, and he was not considered weak among the almighties, the king of venomous worms was still able to help him considerably, be it the intense battles in the Buddhist demon sea back then, or the experts of the Soaring Heaven King Palace who he helped to stop. The king of venomous worms had assisted him greatly. For example, for the past few years, the restoration of his ancient god stars and the recovery of the injuries in his body had all been dependent on the power of the king of venomous worms alone. If he did not have the king of venomous worms, he would have died many times. Moreover, the injuries in his body as well as the destroyed ancient god stars would also not have taken such a short period of time to recover. There is no need to stand on ceremony. If you really want to thank me, please make a breakthrough and become an almighty as early as possible. I am excited just thinking about an inverse cultivator at the level of an almighty, the king of venomous worms said. Jian Wushuang could not help but laugh. With the seclusion this time around, my injuries and abilities have completely recovered. Moreover, I have made a breakthrough to stage 3 ultimate real God, and the comprehension of my reincarnation doctrine has achieved the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace. Furthermore, I have managed to come up with the reincarnation palm by comprehending and studying intensively. In terms of my sword principles, they have also improved considerably. I can say that my gains are really huge. The only thing that I feel is that it is a pity that my comprehension of the space-time doctrine is still at the top of the 6th level of the Doctrine Palace, Jian Wushuang muttered. The space-time doctrine was closely related to the Hongjun golden swords and moon-picking skill. As soon as it made a breakthrough, it would affect his abilities as a whole greatly. However, it was a pity that such a breakthrough was not something that he could achieve even though he wanted it. For example, for the comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine, he was fortunate enough to obtain an opportunity that was bestowed upon him by the one-star man. By comprehending the shocking palm which contained an infinite amount of reincarnation power in his mind, he came to a realization and made a breakthrough as a result. However, in terms of the space-time doctrine, he did not come across any opportunity. Since my gains are extremely huge, I am satisfied. It's time for me to come out of seclusion, Jian Wushuang laughed. On that very day, Jian Wushuang, who had secluded himself in the secret room for a total of 7,800 years, finally came out of seclusion for the battle in the Buddhist demon sea back. Then, only a few people who were the higher-ups of the lineage of Star knew about it. However, they did not make this information public. Hence, when Jian Wushuang secluded himself and came out of seclusion, it did not cause any huge commotion. In a cave, which was completely composed of special gems, Jian Wushuang and Hall Master Yuan sat together, and there was good wine and delicious food in front of them. Jian Wushuang, congratulations. Not only did you recover from your injuries, your abilities have increased greatly as well, Hall Master Yuan laughed. When Hall Master Yuan saw Jian Wushuang for the first time after he came out of seclusion, he could tell that Jian Wushuang was extremely different from before he had secluded himself. After asking him, Hall Master Yuan came to know that Jian Wushuang had made a huge breakthrough during his seclusion. Before your seclusion, you could destroy the killing formation of 9 cuts that was formed by 5 Sir Gods teaming up. But now, your abilities are definitely stronger. Which level have you really achieved? Hall Master Yuan could not help but ask. I should be invincible among Sir Gods. Even if I were to come across a normal Emperor God, I should be able to fight with him head-on. Jian Wushuang laughed. Invincible among Sir Gods. Hall Master Yuan's eyes brightened up at once. He knew what kind of person Jian Wushuang was. Since he had dared to say that, it meant that he was absolutely sure of it. That's great. There's finally another super existence who can intimidate the eternal chaotic world in the lineage of Star. Hall Master Yuan was over the moon. In the eternal chaotic world, an almighty was already considered someone with great authority. However, to a top big powerhouse like the lineage of Star, only Emperor God-level fighting capabilities could intimidate everyone. As for Sir Gods, they still did not have the right to do so. Previously, the lineage of Star had only had the Star Palace Master, the only Emperor God. However, due to the secret skill of Star Palace, the Star Palace Master was a huge deterrent. However, putting the Star Palace Master aside, the lineage of Star only had 2 almighties, and they were Hall Master Shiyun and Hall Master Guexian. Moreover, they were only Sir Gods. 2 other big powerhouses who were similar to the Soaring Heaven King Palace, such Sir Gods were not much of a deterrent. However, with the emergence of Jian Wushuang, a top expert who was invincible among Sir Gods and could also compete with Emperor Gods, it was also enough to intimidate everyone. To the lineage of Star, it was something significant. Hall Master Yuan, I came to find you as I wanted to ask you a question, Jian Wushuang said abruptly. Tell me more about it. Hall Master Yuan laughed. You also know that I have achieved the highest level of a real god, and if I were to take another step forward, I would be going for Almighty. However, to make a breakthrough to Almighty, I first need to obtain the training method for the 7th step of an inverse cultivator. Hence, do you know who possesses this method? Jian Wushuang asked. Although Hall Master Yuan was not an almighty, his identity was very special. The big and small matters in the lineage of Star, as well as many matters of the Sanctuary Alliance, were all taken care of by him. Comparing judgment levels, his level of judgment was not inferior to a normal Emperor God. Therefore, he would know who possessed the 7th step of an inverse cultivator. The training method of the 7th step of an inverse cultivator. Hall Master Yuan squinted his eyes. After muttering to himself for some time, he nodded his head slowly. Indeed, I know who possesses this method. However, it will be extremely difficult for you to obtain the training method from him. Chapter 1756. The Strongest Man, Emperor Bai. Who is it exactly? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but ask. He was also very curious about in whose hand the inverse cultivation skill was. One should know that real God Wu Bei was also an arrogant Sir God when he was at his zenith. Plus, he had a white blaze fruit tree and also a certain capital. However, real God Wu Bei didn't even stand a chance to see the expert. Who exactly was the exceedingly great person that real God Wu Bei couldn't see even though he wanted to? Jian Wushuang, you have been in Sanctuary Alliance for so long. You should have a certain understanding of the Almighties in eternal chaotic world, right? Hall Master Yuan asked. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. How about Great Emperor? Hall Master said. Jian Wushuang was stunned. He knew about the Almighty's in eternal chaotic world. That was the truth. For instance, he could immediately recognize Emperor God Shui Gu the moment he used his divine weapon. However, he only knew some of the Sir Gods and Emperor Gods, and he only had a brief understanding of them. As for great emperors, Jian Wushuang didn't know much about the great emperors. Would the seventh step of inverse cultivation skill be in a great emperor's hand? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, and he isn't any ordinary great emperor, Hall Master Yuan continued. Jian Wushuang, you know that Sanctuary Alliance is a definite overlord of eternal chaotic world, and the ones in the highest position in Sanctuary Alliance are the super experts at great emperor level. Do you know how many great emperors there are in Sanctuary Alliance? Jian Wushuang shook his head. 13 of them. Hall Master Yuan read out a number. Jian Wushuang was surprised. It wasn't because he found the number huge, but there were too few. One must know that Sanctuary Alliance gathered all forces in eternal chaotic world and solo experts in the 10 sanctuaries. Just how few there were. Among the 13 great emperors, there are masters of the 10 sanctuaries. For instance, Purple Moon Great Emperor of Purple Moon Sanctuary, Colored Glaze Emperor of Colored Glaze Sanctuary, East Royal Emperor from East Royal Sanctuary. Besides the 10 sanctuaries, there are 3 other great emperors. Although the 3 great emperors didn't conquer any sanctuaries, their individual powers are enough to shake one. Among the 3 great emperors, one of them is Emperor Bai. Emperor Bai also has another title. He is the strongest man in Sanctuary Alliance. What? Jian Wushuang was shocked. The strongest man in Sanctuary Alliance. The title was definitely highly valuable. Hallmaster paused and continued, regardless of Sir Gods or Emperor Gods, there is a distance of power in between. Same applies to great emperors. Among the 13 Emperor Gods in Sanctuary Alliance, Emperor Bai is no doubt the number 1. His power was widely recognized long ago. Many years ago, at the beginning when Sanctuary Alliance first established, Emperor Bai launched an attack before. He did it in front of the experts, and he killed another great emperor with a thunderous method. Killed another great emperor. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Jian Wushuang, you should know that when one reaches great emperor level, he will be the strongest existence in eternal chaotic world. Since the collapse of ancient times and the first era, eternal chaotic world has never had anyone stronger than a great emperor, while all the great emperors have the ability to split heaven and earth. They possess unbelievably strong power, and their defensive skills are impressive. Under normal circumstances, as both parties are great emperors, even if they couldn't be evenly matched, they should be able to stay alive. Just like the other 12 great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance, it would be difficult even for the strongest to kill the weakest. It is almost impossible. Only Emperor White has the capability to kill a great emperor, and with ease. Tell me now, does Emperor Bai qualify to be the strongest man in Sanctuary Alliance? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. Of course he's qualified. Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. He could kill another great emperor. That itself showed Emperor Bai's power. Hall Master Yuan, as you brought up about Emperor Bai, would the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill be in the hands of this Emperor Bai? Jian Wushuang asked. You're right. The 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. Emperor White should be the only one in Eternal World that has it, because he is the one and only inverse cultivator at the almighty level in Eternal Chaotic World. Hall Master Yuan said. What? Jian Wushuang stood up, and he looked surprised. Emperor Bai is an inverse cultivator. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded. Since the second era until now, there were some inverse cultivators, but Most of them died during inverse cultivation tests. There are only 2 people who passed all inverse cultivation tests and reached the 6th step of inverse cultivation, who are real God Wu Bei and Emperor Bai. Of course, you're the 3rd one now, and you have already surpassed real God Wu Bei. If you were to improve further, you might be able to stand side by side with Emperor Bai. It is also because Emperor Bai is an inverse cultivator. That's why he is so ridiculously powerful and terrifying. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists, and he was astonished. It was true. Inverse cultivators were ridiculous. He was merely on the 6th step, the 3rd stage of ultimate real God, but he was confident in being evenly matched with an ordinary Emperor God. If he were to improve further, reach the 7th step of inverse cultivation, and become an almighty, his fighting power would easily reach the great emperor level. If his comprehension of Heaven Wei were to enhance slightly and reach the level to be compared favorably with an ordinary great emperor, he would be able to kill a great emperor of the same level with ease at his advantageous position as an inverse cultivator. Emperor Bai had obviously reached that level. Jian Wushuang, it's needless for me to tell you how amazing Emperor Bai is. His title as the strongest man in Sanctuary Alliance should reveal that. Emperor Bai is also an ancient existence. His antiquity is far beyond your imagination. There are even rumors that said that he is an expert from the first era. Such an ancient almighty doesn't have any relatives or disciples and is unrestrained. Although he carries the name of Alliance leader in Sanctuary Alliance, he never bothered about the internal affairs. Forget about real God Wu Bei. Even the Emperor gods in Sanctuary Alliance and the great Emperor experts on the highest position hardly see him. It is said that among the other 12 great emperors, only 2 of them have his communication token. In other words, even great emperors find it difficult to look for him. Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn after he heard that. He definitely had to look for Emperor Bai if he wanted to get the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. However, it wasn't easy to look for him. Chapter 1757, demanding the payment of a deb. It was not easy for even great emperors to find Emperor Bai, let alone Jian Wushuang. Moreover, even if he were to find Emperor Bai due to his nature-defying luck, would Emperor Bai give him the method for the 7th step of an inverse cultivator for free? After all, as soon as Jian Wushuang obtained the method for the 7th step of an inverse cultivator, there was a high chance of him becoming an almighty-level inverse cultivator in the future. Moreover, there was also hope for him to achieve a level similar to that of Emperor Bai. If Emperor Bai had some selfish motives, he would definitely not give the method to Jian Wushuang and allow Jian Wushuang to pose a threat to his position. Looks like I can only rely on opportunities in the future to obtain the training method of the 7th step of the inverse cultivator, Jian Wushuang muttered. However, due to real God Wu Bai's warning from before, Jian Wushuang had long prepared himself for such results. Oh right, Hall Master Yuan, there's another matter which concerns the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom, Jian Wushuang said abruptly. The monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom? How is the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom related to you? Hall Master Yuan said, with surprise. It's like this. When real God Wu Bei gave the training method of the 6th step of an inverse cultivator to me back, then I promised him that I would kill the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom on his behalf if I were to possess the abilities to do so. Jian Wushuang said, Since I have made a promise, unless I have no abilities or no way to do so, I will not go back on my words. Jian Wushuang would not make promises easily. However, he held promises in high regard. Back then in Wu Bai's cave, since he had promised real God Wu Bei, he would always hold it firmly in his mind. Previously, he had not had enough abilities. However, things had changed. I see. Hall Master Yuan understood and said, The monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom is a ruler of many holy kingdoms, and his reputation is not small within the eternal chaotic world. Moreover, he is a member of the Sanctuary Alliance. As for his abilities, he is a top Sir God expert. With your current abilities, if it were 1-to-1, it would be possible for you to kill him. However, the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom's background is not simple. Background? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Regarding the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom's abilities, he already knew about it previously. However, he did not know about the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom's background. Hence, he was asking Hall Master Yuan to get to know some background of the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom. Jian Wushuang, just now, I told you that within the Sanctuary Alliance, apart from the masters of the 10 sanctuaries, there are 3 other great emperors. Putting emperor by aside, among the 2 remaining great emperors, there is a great Emperor Zisu. Among the 13 great emperors, Great Emperor Z, you can be considered one of the top 5. Moreover, the relationship between the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom and Great Emperor Zisu is not normal. It is said that when Great Emperor Zisu was still a real god, he owed the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom a favor. After that, he became a great emperor, and the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom has been serving under him ever since. If you wish to kill the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom, you have to get past the level of Great Emperor Zisu, Hall Master Yuan said. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang was stunned. Previously, he had known that the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom had a great background. However, he did not expect his background to actually be so deep-rooted. With such friendship with a great emperor, and that Great Emperor Zisu owed him a favor. If he were to come across any danger, Great Emperor Zisu would definitely come to rescue him personally. Moreover, if he were to avenge real God Wu Bei by killing the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom, there would be a high chance of Great Emperor Zisu coming personally to kill him. Seems like I will be unable to take revenge for real God Wu Bei for another short period of time. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He had promised to help real God Wu Bei take revenge. Moreover, he would only do so when he had the abilities, and he had to also be in a situation where he was sure that he could stay alive. However, at that moment, it was obvious that his abilities were not enough. At the very least, I must wait until I have enough things to capitalize on that I can face Great Emperor Zisu. Then, I will be able to take action against the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom for real, Jian Wushuang murmured. Jian Wushuang, it is impossible for you to kill the monarch of the Demon Heart Kingdom now, and I believe that you would not be so stupid. Hall Master glanced at Jian Wushuang and continued speaking, since your abilities have fully recovered, what do you plan to do next? Next, Jian Wushuang could not help but raise the corners of his mouth. I want to demand the payment of a debt. Demand the payment of a debt. Hall Master Yuan was stunned. The Soaring Heaven King Palace? That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded his head earnestly. To begin with, there is a huge grudge between me and the Soaring Heaven King Palace that is unresolved. Moreover, outside the Buddhist demon Seaback, then they almost killed me when I was seriously injured, and I remember this debt extremely clearly. Hence, I must absolutely think of a way to get them to repay me. It's easy to say that. However, the abilities of the Soaring Heaven King Palace are not normal. Do you have the confidence to deal with them? Hall Master Yuan said with concern. Don't worry. Since I dare to demand the payment of a debt, I naturally have absolute confidence. Jian Wushuang laughed. Hall Master Yuan, you definitely have a better understanding of the Soaring Heaven King Palace than me. Please tell me what kind of experts the Soaring Heaven King Palace have, as well as some of the trump cards that they possess. With this, I will be more prepared. Jian Wushuang knew about some experts of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. However, he did not know all of them. No problem. Hall Master Yuan said, immediately. According to the information that the lineage of Star has collected, there are a total of 11 Almighties in the soaring Heaven King Palace. Among the Almighties, 9 of them are Sir Gods, while the remaining 2 are Emperor Gods. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang's eyes could not help but shrink. The soaring Heaven King Palace was a top powerhouse of the eternal chaotic world as well, and it was no wonder that their ways of doing things had always been so unreasonable. It seemed that they were unreasonable due to their absolute abilities. An Almighty was strong enough to be called someone with great authority in the eternal chaotic world. However, the soaring Heaven King Palace actually had a total of 11 of them. It should be known that a similar top powerhouse like the lineage of Star only contained 3 Almighties. By including Jian Wushuang, who possessed the fighting capabilities of an Almighty, there were only 4 of them. Compared to the soaring Heaven King Palace, they were indeed lacking a lot in terms of numbers. If not for the Star Palace Master, with the soaring Heaven King Palace's abilities, they would probably be able to suppress the lineage of Star completely. For the 9 Sir Gods of the soaring Heaven King Palace, there are some with strong abilities, as well as some with weak abilities. In particular, there are 3 of them who stand at the top of the Sir Gods. As for the 2 Emperor Gods, they are Emperor God Tianling and Emperor God Tian Shao. These 2 Emperor Gods are the oldest existences in the soaring Heaven King Palace. At the same time, they are also the 2 founders of the soaring Heaven King Palace. Among the 2 of them, Emperor God Tianling is the stronger one. Emperor God Tianling has been famous for a long time, and he became famous a lot sooner than our palace master. Moreover, his abilities long ago achieved the peak of an Emperor God, and he is slightly stronger than the palace master. In the eternal chaotic world, he is also a well-known super expert. Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang frowned. The current him could compete with Emperor God experts head-on, and if he were to encounter Emperor Gods at a similar level to Emperor God Shuigu, he would not be fearful at all. However, if he were to encounter a top Emperor God, he would not have absolute confidence. Fortunately, Hall Master Yuan said again, Emperor God Tianling is proud and ambitious. Ever since he achieved the peak of being an Emperor God, he has been trying every means to go for Great Emperor. Moreover, it would definitely be impossible to make a breakthrough to Great Emperor if he were to rely on his own training. Therefore, there is a need for him to look for opportunities. As such, for many years, Emperor God Tianling has been traveling in the second layer, and he will only return once every hundreds of thousands of years.